Hello, folks. This is Jeff Davis with the legendary Jeff Davis Show from Central Texas, USA. And I love Mike Hanson Archives. Peace out, baby.
I love Mike Hanson Archives.
Are you ready to run?
It's Mike Hanson here, your Facebook buddy and YouTube friend. As a lot of y'all know, I was the producer for Alex Jones and Jeff Davis, Steve Lane, George Humphrey, and a lot of those other guys from about 1995 till 2010. And what we're doing is we're busy trying to get all these shows that we did, over 2,200 shows that we did on Access TV, uploaded to YouTube and other social media spots on the internet, getting them off of the old VSH tapes and transferred over to computer, which is not easy. I've hired some people to help me. I've bought a bunch of equipment, and as a lot of y'all know, I'm not computer savvy whatsoever. I dread the day that computers ever was invented, but I'm having to go and do all this because if we don't, these tapes are going to be ruined forever and the history is going to be lost, because these shows that we did back in the 90s were very historical in my opinion, and I think they will be. And a lot of predictions were made on these shows for the future, and I want to get them up. So please subscribe to Mike Hanson Archives on YouTube, Hanson Archives, and my new one is Waco Archives, which anything we did with Waco, you know, we rebuilt the church out there in 1999, and I was friends with a lot of the survivors in the mid-90s, and all those interviews that I can put together, we're going to put on Waco Archives. So I sure appreciate y'all. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm putting this in between some of the old shows, and if you want to write us, I wrote a book called Bohemian Grove, Cult of Conspiracy, where Alex Jones and I snuck into the Bohemian Grove. I'm funding this operation. If you send me $25 to 901 St. Joseph Street in Gonzales, Texas, I will send you a signed copy of my book, and the money will go to either I give all the money that comes from my book to the Branch Davidian Church, or to help them every year. This year we didn't get to go up there because of the virus, or I put it into putting these tapes on YouTube. Of course, I have to fund a lot of this myself because that don't go a long way. I just got a box of new books in, so if you'd like to do it, you can also call 830-672-3089 and put it on a credit card. All right, my tacos are here, so I'll talk to you later.
Okay,
but you can figure it out. Same one as Mr. Alex Jones. We're standing here at the main post, and I've invited Shannon to perhaps come down and speak at the Downsized Government Conference. Why don't you tell people what you're doing out here tonight?
Well, I'm just trying to get a little feedback. I mean, there's a lot of people that protest this. We see it on TV all the time. People really want to know if it's real. And if it is real, how can we participate? Everyone fears the IRS. We've been fearing them for years and years and years. They're the most powerful force in our lives, more powerful than the Lord Jesus Christ, if you can imagine that. But we want to know how to beat it. No one wants to pay taxes if we don't have to. We love our country, but if we don't have to pay the taxes, we're not going to pay them. And we're just out here trying to find out, you know, the direction, where we're headed, how we can get involved.
What I think is interesting is we had a woman quoting a Bible verse earlier. We've been trying to interview people, and I'd say 98% of people won't talk on camera. And I think a lot of that's through fear. And I don't mean apathy or being scared or nervous. I think they genuinely are fearful.
Absolutely. The IRS can kiss my big white butt. I don't give a damn. I mean, I pay them
Shannon
every year,
Burke.
year after year after year. I pay and I pay and I pay, and you know, there's no end to it. And I, more than anyone else, is more interested in in the sovereignty individual of America and how I can become that way, and the homework and what I need to do. It's all about education. Learn what you can, go to the seminars, exercise what these people are telling you, and beat our opponent. Beat our opponent.
What's the name of your new show going to be?
The Shannonberg Show, I think.
Very good, very good. One quick thing. I noticed that one woman who was quoting Bible verses when we spoke to her. I think it's very interesting that God himself only asked for 10% of your income, but the IRS asked for about 38%. What do you think about that?
I think God knows what he's doing. You know, he doesn't want to gouge anybody. You know, God needs a little bit of money. He's got a lot of overhead, God does. He's got heaven, he's got everybody up there. He only needs a little bit of money for overhead. Of course, our country needs more than he needs, which tells you something right there. Listen to my show. God calls in quite a bit, so thank you, Steve.
It was nice meeting you, Shannon. I appreciate it. I'm going to get you down there. I'll call you.
You got it.
We're here with former City Council member George Humphreys. George, can you join us for a moment? This is, I'd like to introduce George Humphreys. He was a former Austin City Council member. George, I'd like to welcome you. We're doing a little report here for the Freedom Report. And I'm Steve Lane. Before we've met, I'm bad with names, so I was making a point to tell everybody my name. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing down here tonight?
Well, this is the 7th year in a row that I've come down on April 15th. I am totally disgusted with the IRS, the federal income tax, and the Federal Reserve Board. And I think that Americans across the country are waking up to the fact that the IRS and the federal income tax is first unconstitutional. It was the 16th Amendment was never properly passed. It had to have been passed by 2/3 of the state's legislatures, and only 3 states actually passed it. So first of all, it's unconstitutional. Secondly, it's not efficient. It is probably the most inefficient form of taxation there is. Third, it's full of legal loopholes and political favors. It is not fair. People all across the United States are getting ripped off by this. And people realize that the debt of this country is so incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah, you've spoke about those numbers before at the Downsized Government Conference. Can you cite some of those figures now?
Yeah, absolutely. Federal debt, which includes all types of federal debt, not only the operating budget, but Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, pensions, is about $19.7 billion, not including interest. Is about $19.7 billion, not including interest. Personal debt in the United States is at an all-time high. For the first time in the history of the United States, American families have more debt than they do assets. That's another $6.5 trillion. State and local debt, which includes school boards, counties, villages, and the state, another $3.5 trillion. And corporate debt is about $3.2 trillion. Total debt in the United States, and this is very, very conservative number, is about $32 trillion, which is much, much, much higher than the assets of this country.
I think I've heard you put that in some more human terms before, something along the lines of how much you'd have to spend to pay that off, something like that. Do you remember that figure?
When you start talking about hundreds of thousands or millions or even billions of dollars, it just becomes zeros. And now we're talking about trillions of dollars. To put this into perspective, $1 trillion, if I owed you $1 trillion and I had to pay you back, and I paid you a $100 bill once a second, every day of the week, every week of the month, every month of the year, you know how long it would take me to pay you $1 trillion?
How long?
317 years.
And that's pretty fast, spending $100 bills that fast.
And that's with no interest. If there's even a 1% interest rate, we can't pay that back. And of course, the $32 trillion debt has an average of about a 7 or 8% interest rate on it.
I don't even think my wife can spend money that fast.
I mean, what we're talking about is the United States is not moving toward bankruptcy. We're far past bankruptcy. And unless the people of the United States, the citizens of the United States, take very seriously their responsibility as citizens to stand up for the Constitution of this country and demand a decentralized banking system such as our founding fathers had, with a hard currency, which is called constitutional banking, abolishing the IRS, living within our means, and returning power to the states, we're going to reap what we've created, which is an incredible amount of financial turmoil followed by social problems, and with the end result, a transfer of power to the people, the power elite. And as you all know, as who watch Jeff Davis and the other shows, you've all heard us talk about Hegelian theory.
Right.
Hegel was a great philosopher, and he talked about thesis, antithesis, synthesis. In American, that means problem, reaction, solution.
Right.
And what they're saying is that the power elite create a problem. Of course,
offer the solution.
Then there is a reaction to it, and the solution always is more transfer of power to the central government. And people of the United States have to wake up to this reality that our sovereign rights as individuals to believe what we want, to have freedom of religion, no matter what religion, to live our lives in peace, as long as we don't get in other people's way, is that those rights are being taken away from us.
For lack of a better term, who is it that holds the notes on all that debt, so to speak? For lack of a better term.
Well, the power elite hold the notes, and the power elite is made up of what used to be called the Illuminati, which is a small band of international financiers who have been for years orchestrating what's called fractional reserve banking. And with fractional reserve banking, which was instituted with the Federal Reserve Board legislation in 1913.
Oh yeah, all in the name of saving the, or no, that was actually a little bit later. Excuse me, I got my years mixed up.
But with fractional reserve banking, it mathematically guarantees the bankruptcy of our country. Now, whether that's 10 years or 50 years or 200 years, it all depends upon the rate of borrowing. But the fact is that with the type of banking that we do have, is that it guarantees bankruptcy. And anybody who objectively looks at the economics of this country will realize that we are far past bankruptcy. And the people of the United States don't deserve that. We're good, strong, hard-working people, but we have been drugged and we've been mind controlled into becoming consumers rather than citizens.
What's it going to take to get you back on City Council again?
Oh, this is much more important to me right now than the City Council. The protection of the Constitution of the United States, the protection of sovereign rights, the waking up of people across, not just in Austin, Texas, but across Texas and across the United States and across the world, is the most important issue that's facing.
You know, I think it's interesting. Bill Bennett, at the national level, in national politics, many people, he's a conservative who many people want and expected to run for a Republican nomination for president. He had became a private citizen again, so to speak, and I've heard him make comments to the effect that he'll probably never run for elected office just because of the fact he seems to have found a niche, if you will, and I don't know if he's being truthful in this matter, but it's definitely held true for you anyway, that he's had a greater influence and effect to his particular cause by being a private citizen as opposed, or at least a pseudo-private citizen, as opposed to being an elected official. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were very clear about the fact that citizens from all stations of life should come and serve in government for a relatively short period of time, offer their expertise, and then leave and go back to the private sector. They did not want a political bureaucracy.
Just think about George Washington. He was basically offered a crown. After the Revolutionary War, he was offered a crown, and here's a gentleman who said, no, I'd rather go back and plant tobacco. I mean, it was very shocking to the world at the time, and tell people that today, it's still a very shocking thing today, and it kind of plays along those lines.
Yeah, well, if we don't learn from history, we repeat it. And our founding fathers and mothers were very, very special people. And I don't know what happened, but they woke up and they were very aware. And in our education system, which is dumbing down our children, not taught about the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence or great Americans such as Andrew Jackson or why Abraham Lincoln really was great,
right,
or many of the others who stood up for personal freedom, stood up for the Constitution, which in standing up for the Constitution and the Republic of the United States means standing up for individual sovereign rights. And that means that each individual is more important than the government. And folks, that's what this is all about. Do we believe in ourselves and do we believe in God, or do we believe in Big Brother and Bill Clinton and the people in Washington, D.C.?
You know, I heard something really interesting the other day. I want you to comment on it. And I had never really looked at the Constitution in this fashion before. I've looked at the Constitution a lot. I haven't quite studied it. I've read the Federalist Papers, although that's a pretty tough read. And I heard somebody to me, the Constitution doesn't outline the rights of citizens. The rights of citizens are God-given rights or natural-born rights. And what the Constitution actually does is gives the federal government and state governments boundaries. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, our founding fathers and mothers were extremely clear and very articulate to limit the power of the federal government. The 10th Amendment is absolutely crystal clear, and what our founding fathers and mothers were talking about was keeping government local, because local decisions are the best decisions. And unfortunately, since 1933, the 10th Amendment has basically been discarded. Almost 95% of the laws that are passed go against constitutional law, because the 10th Amendment states very clearly that the only thing that the federal government should do is raise an army during war and
Post roads.
and take care of roads, interstate commerce, and
There's
commerce.
six things.
There's six things. And it is not the thousands and thousands of laws that are passed.
You mean that Social Security is nowhere in the Constitution?
It's totally incredible that Americans, even educated people such as ourselves, I mean, I was blind to this not too long ago. You know,
I'm still learning every day.
Every day I'm learning about it, and the fact is that the good news is that we're waking up. As I look around, the people around here really are aware that we have to stand up for ourselves. Nobody's going to take care of us.
Just some closing comments. I've heard people call into the show before, and they express concern, almost fear, if you will, for standing up or doing things, worrying about the feedback they might get. Ask me specific questions. Are you being followed, or are helicopters hovering over your house, that sort of thing. I got to tell you personally, from my standpoint, the more I've gotten involved, the more I've gotten educated, the more free I have felt. I mean, I must tell you, I can't remember where I heard it. I've said it quite a bit. I heard somebody say, your heart is free, have the courage to follow it. And what I've noticed is that freedom must be given. Freedom is something internal, whereas liberties are something external. Those can actually be taken. Your freedom can't be taken. It must be given. At least I believe that. How have you felt as far as the more educated you've become? Have you felt more free, less free, fearful of your government? Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Well, to be totally honest, I am fearful of our government. I mean, there's some very tough people involved in the control of power, and they're not going to let go easily, just like the British did not let go of the United States easily. And our founding fathers, of the 56 people who signed the Declaration of Independence, 47 had their homes ransacked and burned down, but they had the
small price to pay.
They had the freedom of their spirit to do what was right.
That's right.
And as Benjamin Franklin said, if men make themselves sheep, the wolves will come and eat us.
Boy, you got.
And if we do not stand up right now, at this moment, not next year, not next month, not next week, if we don't stand up and protect our constitutional rights, we're not going to have it. And God is on our side, and I'm not trying to be Pollyannish about that, but
even if I went to my wife's church on Sunday and sat through an Easter sermon, and what I thought was interesting was, if you are a believer, if you read the Bible and you believe in the Bible, you know that God never just sent lightning bolts down to do things, and He never sent smoke or anything like that. He always worked through men. And I was struck by that fact in church on Sunday. It had nothing to do with what he was speaking about. I thought, all these people, to me anyway, it appeared that they were primping themselves for death and that they weren't busy living. And I thought, they believe so strongly in biblical prophecy, but what I thought what was missing from all that is the human role in biblical prophecy. And if you are a believer, which I'm personally kind of so-so about that, but if you are a believer, you must believe in that Bible, and you must understand that all prophecy has been fulfilled through men. Christ Himself was a man. He was sent as a man. And I just think it's very interesting that seems to be lacking, and at least I think, overall lacking in a lot of religions today.
The interesting thing is that every major religion, not just Christianity, but every major religion has their own prophecies, and every major religion prophesizes about this period of time as a difficult period of time. And clearly all the different religions and all the different philosophies say that the protection of individual sovereign rights is the way to God, so that if people are always concerned about a dictator, they spend all their time protecting themselves. If they have freedom, they can focus on doing what is right, whatever their religion. Now, even if you don't believe in God, the protection of individual rights is fundamental to the advancement of society and to the individual.
It squares with natural law as well. Even if you're a humanist, you just have to admit that. I appreciate your comments today. Like I said, I've felt more free than ever. Every day that I learn something, I feel more and more free. And I appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks. Well, there you have it. That was George Humphreys, former city council member. Tried to maybe see if he would be interested in running for city council again. I'd like to see him go to head-to-head with some of the current city council members, including the mayor himself. But George has found himself a wonderful little niche, and I think, I believe, truthfully, that he's probably having more influence and a better effect on individual citizens than he ever could have as a city council member. Here I am, Steve Lane, with the Freedom Report. We're going to do a little interview here with Roger Settler, who ran for representative in District 51. Again, we're still outside the main post office downtown between 5th and 6th Street off of Guadalupe. Roger, why don't you tell us a little bit about your run for representative? And I heard just now, I'm only learning just about you, that you lost. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was the most interesting and colorful race, I must say. My opponent, Fred Ebner, is a rather conventional Republican in some respects, not in others. He's pro-big business and a log cabin Republican, which means he's fairly liberal in a lot of positions. As a result, we had an unusual three-way race.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. We had a rather unusual three-way race. David Redman Blakely was the third man in the race. He endorsed me after his loss in the March 10th primary, ran third, and we tried a joint effort together against Mr. Ebner, who was funded a little better than I was, about 2 to 1. I see that the police state is coming. How ironic that they seem to follow me. Now I have flashing lights behind me in the interview, which is interesting because I planned for a recount in my race.
How close was the race?
I lost by 100 votes.
Wow. And for those people who think your vote doesn't count, yeah, I'd say
it does, particularly in that there was only a total of 500, 600 votes in the entire race. So a shift of very little would have changed it. I have in my, this is the old Joe McCarthy tactic, I have in here a list of 11 people, but this is for real. It's prima facie evidence of 11 people who double voted.
Really?
And also the lady that was here earlier, Linda Cox, my income tax client tonight, voted early for me in precinct 442, and her vote was not tallied in the final results. So this is an instance where had there been even one vote in the precinct early voting, I couldn't say for sure well, something is amiss, but knowing that I received 0 vote official tally for early voting for 442, I know that something's afoot. When I went to Palmer Auditorium last night, the police state certainly made its presence known. We were directed to go this way and that. The primary directors were banned from certain areas, the people running the primaries themselves in official capacity. And I realized that it would be quite easy for the votes to be stolen, as they were stolen from Cuauhtemoc Cardenas when he ran for president in 1988 in Mexico. That the way it's set up, we no longer have the ballot safeguards where we sign the ballots. We used to have a ballot divided into a ballot and a stub. The stub was signed, placed in a locked box, so that if a contest of the election were ever proposed or carried through, that we could check the signatures against the signature roster. Now we have only the signature roster and unsigned ballots, which easily could be shifted back and forth, because having been a precinct chairman, though the ballots are still numbered, it is not a voting safeguard, because the way you record the numbered ballots on the form can easily be altered. So,
did you have any problems with changing venue, like the very public problems that Bob Hans has brought to light, or at least alleged in his particular race against Jim Shaw?
Yes, I think that changing and combining the precincts lowers the turnout, just like telling the voters in the media that they haven't voted very much. You know, they'll say, well, only 3% of the people turned out in the runoff primary of 1998. Well, we know that there's substantial duplications on the voter roster. There are 474,000 people officially registered in Travis County. With a population of 1 million and the demographic fact that 50% of any given population is under the age of 18, that would mean that virtually every citizen over 18 is registered. Well, when you take away the college student population, many of whom are registered elsewhere, a substantial body of people you'll run into who are not registered, the numbers just aren't there. We're way over-registered, and the media is doing a disservice to the public saying that it's only 3% or 5% or 10% turnout. The truth is it may be closer to 15 or 20%.
Yeah, I'm kind of ashamed of the fact that it's amateurs like us that get this kind of factual information out instead of these so-called professionals that we see on mainstream media.
Yes. And in fact, the way the system is set up is perfectly geared for a rigged election. There's no way that we can check without recount the way an election has gone, and no one does a recount. They're usually talked out of it by various officials who say, oh,
well, it costs a lot of money, doesn't it? Don't you have to?
You have to pay for it. And the fact is, however, without a proper recount, we can't find out if the vote tally.
No point doing a recount if you're not going to do it right.
Right. Most of the people, in fact, all of the previous recounts that I know of in Travis County were recounts involving the use of a computer again. They would simply substitute another program or another computer programmer of their choice. And of course, the result would change very little because it is the computer itself that is at issue. I believe that the computer does not tally votes properly, and I think that ballots could easily be switched in the back room. I don't believe a recount can reveal that, but what it might do is make the public be nervous about continuing to do that sort of thing. If they know that if good candidates would file recounts regularly, it would be comparable to the system in which death penalty broke down in the 16 and 1700s. In that period, you could be hanged for stealing an apple. Pickpockets would work the crowd, and then they would be hanged on the spot if they were caught stealing without trial. Well, the juries began to say, we can't do this anymore, it's barbaric, and so they would refuse to give the death penalty. And they started breaking down. And today, Britain has no death penalty.
Are you moving forward with any sort of lawsuit or anything like that? Where do you go from here?
Well, no, the recount is the first step, and it may answer our questions, and indeed, you know, it may come out that it was a better run election than my perception. I don't think that's going to.
How much does a recount cost?
About $1,000 roughly.
And basically you have to pay that either out of campaigns or your own pocket. Is that correct?
So.
Are you now, just out of curiosity, are you allowed to try and raise money now in an effort to do that, or do you only can use existing?
Oh no, I could raise money now.
Oh, okay, that's very good. I have a few questions about the ASAP program. That is the Absent Students Assistance Project that's been put on here in Travis County. Do you know about the program, and what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's another manifestation of the growing police state, a police presence that has developed and is continuing to develop in this country, that if not opposed, we will lose our freedoms as certainly as other countries have lost their freedoms. I believe that to send armed peace officers out to harass citizens at night is a violation of constitutional law. It should not be done. The school system is a dismal failure, and to force students who are unwilling to go is a violation of their constitution.
I've brought up the point in Commissioner's Court a few times that I think this is the last gasping, dying breath of a bloated educational bureaucracy.
Exactly.
It's definitely a grab for money, as far as I'm concerned. Actually, I personally think it's being sold on different fronts. From the constable's point of view, I think he's selling it. It's an effort to expand the scope of his responsibilities in an effort, really, I think, to run eventually for county sheriff. He's had a failed run at county sheriff once before. I think he's hoping to expand his reach in an effort to say, look at the responsibilities, look what I've done as county constable. I think it's been sold to the Commissioner's Court as an anti-crime program, which the way it's being sold and the lies that are being used to sell it make pretty convincing arguments in that standpoint as an anti-crime program. And I think the school districts see it as a couple ways. Number one, to get more money, because with the statistics that they're using, which I've proven are false, they think they're getting more money from the state. And also, two, they get to hand over the responsibility of getting kids to school to someone else. And for them being understaffed right now, I'm sure they jumped at the chance to just be able to take the names of kids that are absent. They fax them off, to the county constables, they're done. They no longer have any responsibility with regards to that, and I think that's why it's being sold to them. So I think we're seeing a multifaceted deal there. It's not just one thing. You spoke about it being unconstitutional. Have you researched it enough to know about some of the state laws that are in effect, and speak a little bit about how you consider it to be unconstitutional?
Well, I believe that merely the act of requiring a student to be in school is probably unconstitutional. Granted, the states may pass statutes to that effect, but I believe it would interfere with a proper and strict review of our U.S. Constitution. So the educational system was designed to nurture the student, to educate the student, not to persecute them. But of course, it's a manifestation of the police state. The new paradigm is therefore to arrest and harass and generally make the student feel ill at ease in his own environment, his or her own environment.
The last safe bastion that they have on earth is their home, or at least somewhat. I mean, obviously there are people in certain parts of towns and cities that maybe aren't safe in their homes, but that was one of my problems with it as well. The one last place they could feel safe, and the government has found a way to try and come out there and violate us there as well.
It's unconscionable. It should be ended immediately.
It also is disturbing to me as well that these constables, if a child is skipping school, it seems to me they seem to not understand that their parent is the authority in the household. And I'm disturbed by the fact that if a constable is coming to your house and in essence overriding your parent's veto power, or overriding your parent's powers, I think you exaggerate that circumstance even more. That if already they're having doubts as to the authority of their parent, and then here comes this individual with a badge and a gun who gets to tell mommy and daddy what to do, that even further hits home the point. They get even further confused as to who's the authority in the household.
That's exactly right.
I got to tell you, we've been fighting this battle for a while. We're not ending. We're just kind of reorganizing at this point. I'll tell you what, I was glad to see you down here tonight. It was nice meeting you. Can you talk a little bit about what you saw down here tonight, what you think about all this, why you ended up here tonight?
I think this is an outgrowth of the long fight that began with Alex Hamilton and the National Bank in the 1790s. We've had a long history of attempts to establish international control over our money system. It began all the way back then with the British being a primary proponent and the Rothschilds. Now we have lost the battle again that Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln made efforts against Teddy Roosevelt, with the result that in 1913, in the wee hours of the morning in December, I believe it's December the 22nd.
Turn in your gold.
The Federal Reserve was created, and much of our freedom went at that point in time. The Internal Revenue Act came out right after that, but it was a manifestation of the beast rather than the beast itself. The beast is a privately owned institution that asserts governmental authority over us, and indeed over the entire world, by setting U.S. interest rates to enrich a handful of individuals. And I've said for years, whenever you create a billionaire, you drive 50,000 middle-class people into poverty. And people cheer the new billionaire. They should keep in mind that the rest of us will pay for that, because there's only so much money. It's a finite supply, and when it is accumulated into the hands of a few, the many will suffer.
The many will suffer. That's very interesting. I think that's a good point to end on. I appreciate your time again. It was very nice meeting you. I wish I could have met you before.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Well, there you have it. We're going to wrap it up here tonight. I've got got a babysitter to get to. Got to go pick my kids up. I appreciate the time Mike's given me to do some interviews here tonight, and I appreciate all the individuals who came down and stood up for their freedom, and I hope more people can do it in the future. Please come to the Downsized Government Conference the last Sunday this month. I believe that's the 26th. It's from 1 to 5 o'clock. Get there by noon. It's every month, the last Sunday of every month. I encourage you to get there by noon at the very latest, because we've had a packed house every month. Minimum, we've been having 180 people one month, about 250. Also, if you'd like to volunteer to help set up, get there about 8 o'clock. Our featured speakers this month will be the Travis County Sheriff's SWAT team. And also, as you can see from one of the interviews tonight, I've invited, and I hope she'll accept, Sheriff Margot Frazier and others. So please be there. Please stand up for your freedom, and I appreciate your time.
Up to the line, a friend of ours, and I understand he plugged our Branch Davidian get-together. He's with American Sovereign. He hosts an international shortwave radio program. Brent Johnson. Brent, can you hear us? Can he hear us? Okay. Brent,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good to have you on. We've just got a few minutes here, Brent. I actually want to ask that you, after we'll let you go a few minutes here, but I want to get you on my radio show too.
Absolutely.
Where we can go, like basically for as long as you want.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to mention to you, Brent, before we go on with what you got to say here. This is public access television, and we can't be engaged in selling things or mentioning 1-800 numbers because we've already been suspended down here once for what they call commercialism. So I mean, just basically give us what you're doing and that kind of thing, and say whatever you want, but we just can't engage in selling things or call to action verbs and that kind of thing.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, Brent. Welcome to the Jeff Davis Show television version. Brent Johnson. Brent, how's things going with you, my friend?
Well, I hate to say it, but I'm very, very, very busy. I'm busy because people need to learn that they have unalienable rights to live their lives as they see fit. And that's what I do. I teach people that. I call myself a modern-day freedom fighter. And unfortunately, what I'm doing is really needed. We have a situation, and I mean, everybody's talking about Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. That's not the situation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The situation we have is that on a daily basis, atrocities by government are being committed and perpetrated on the American people. I mean, atrocities. People are being, families are being separated. Children are being raped. Literally raped by police. I'll tell you a story in a moment. Our rights, our freedoms are being encroached upon in the name of this ambiguous social greater good. Hey, folks, there's no greater good than each of us being free. Always remember that. And let me tell you a little story here. Even though you're in another part of the country, this actually happened in Texas a year ago. But I'm going to tell you the recent story. A few days ago in McMinnville, Oregon, in my home state, in a middle school, a public middle school, there was apparently some kind of a robbery, or so they said. And as a result, 30 girls, 30 female students aged in their early teens, 13, 14, something like that, were forced to strip totally. Shirt, bra, panties, the whole thing. They were told, if you don't do it, we will have the police do it for you. The parents were not informed. Parents were not even called. The children who objected were not allowed to object. This is going to be a big thing. I mean, like, this just happened. A year ago, a similar thing happened in Texas, and before that in Pennsylvania. Guess what a judge said? Judge said in the Texas case, came out and said, well, you put your children into public school, and they become wards of the state, and you lose your parental rights.
Yeah. Well, let me just briefly tell you a little bit about what's going on here. Did you hear our Republic Radio broadcast? You probably didn't, because I know you just finished a seminar or something, right?
Yes, that's right, and I've got another one coming up, and so no, I didn't.
Well, let me just tell you.
Right now, I'm calling from my hotel room.
Okay, let me just tell you this briefly. What we got going down here in Travis County, Texas, and it's in 3 counties now, fixing to expand into statewide operation, is a program called ASAP. Absent Student Assistance Program. I think it's funny when the enemy throws out a program, it's assisting, but if we're against it, we're terrorists, if you understand the lingo there.
Oh, yeah.
But basically what it amounts to now is truant officers, armed government agents, are coming on to people's property. I'm going to get into this later in the program. Coming on to people's property and 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, walking onto people's property. And in my particular situation with one of my producers down here, 3 weeks ago, he came onto his property, proceeded to knock on the door and file a report with his 11-year-old son. Now think about the implications to this. Think about what the invasion, the trespassing, how they're implying. Basically, what it amounts to is if they don't show up for school, for the public schools, then they're now sending these truant officers out to violate people.
However, Jeff, this is a thing people need to understand. These truant officers, regardless of whether they come from the county, the state, the feds, it doesn't matter. They all come from the corporate county, the corporate state, and all of that is under federal legislation, all of it. So and this is true of all regulations, by the way. All regulations come from the federal government and federal law. So what happens is you need to understand that as an American, as a Texan, you are not a federal citizen. You do not have to blindly obey federal laws. This translates as follows. Some agent, Child Protective Services or Truancy Division or whatever they're going to call this thing, comes knocking on your door. Excuse me, you're trespassing. May I see, I'm from the government. Oh, may I see your warrant? You don't have one? You're trespassing. You go, you call the police, you have the individual removed. Especially if you call the sheriff. Growing numbers of sheriffs are willing to remove federal agents from their county who have come in without due process. There's been like a resurgence of sheriffs who take their elected position, their constitutional position, very seriously. My point is, you don't put up with federal bureaucrats in your face. You don't have to talk to them unless they first establish the lawful right to be there to speak to you. You, who are the master in this country, the ruler, the king, the queen. They have to go through rigorous due process before before you're required to talk to them. So you can always say, I don't want to talk to you. And the simplest way to do that is to ask them whether or not your compliance is voluntary or mandatory. They will not tell you mandatory if they can't back it up, because you're not required to talk to federal bureaucrats and give them any information. So if your child is not in school, in their school, maybe you're schooling your child, which, as a matter of fact, if you are, your child's probably a lot smarter.
Well, yeah, but, you understand the premise, though, the danger of this. Understanding, the police abuses, Ruby Ridge, Idaho, Waco, Texas. By the way, you're coming to the seminar, is that correct?
Oh, yes, I will be there.
Okay. There's a lot of things going on, Brent, and what we have done, we talk about the federal, we talk about the big problem here, because all this boils down to, of course, this New World Order. That's the bottom line to all of this.
But, Jeff, let me take it even further than that. There's a bottom line even beneath the New World Order, and that is inherently in your heart the knowledge that there is nothing more valuable than your God-given gift to life and to freedom, liberty. Nothing. Then everything else fits into perspective, which includes the New World Order, the Federal Reserve, the President, anything else going on falls into perspective. But when they just connecting it back to what we were saying a moment ago, when they start hassling our children, when they start taking our children more and more, they're taking our future. You and I can be out there on the front lines, but a generation from now, who's going to continue the resistance? Who's going to continue to fight the battle for freedom, which is a never-ending battle?
Well, I think that's the whole point. See, every fascist authoritarian society in the history of the world has been obsessed with control of the youth. And I think if you watch the news regularly, all these government programs, everything's for the kids. It's always for the children. It's just a huge brainwashing job going on right now. And it's very dangerous. And I can tell you, Brent, we actually, we've got some things going on down here that, if we can take what we're doing here and move it up to a national level with our conferences and with the shortwave, with the radio broadcasts and all of this, I believe we can get enough energy going here to turn this thing back around.
I think so also.
So we need people. I got to admit, we need people like your all's help that are already there. We're just getting established on Republic, and hope to be on shortwave here hopefully next week. But you guys that are already out there fighting, bringing these things to the forefront, we definitely solicit your help in what we're doing down here. And when you come down here on the 22nd, you will see what's going on down here, and I think you'll like it. I'm
looking forward to it. I'm actually coming down the 21st to do a seminar in Houston. Then I'm going up to Austin on the 22nd to attend the Waco thing. And so I'm really looking forward to. This is my first official trip into Texas, and I think Texas is in a unique position to set the pace for restoring the rule of law in these United States of America. I think you really are. That you have a special situation down there, and you have special people. You Texans have always been Texans first.
Well, we just had Rick McLaren on the program last week. I don't know whether you probably weren't aware of that, but he called in from his from Seagoville Federal Prison.
How's he doing?
His spirit sounded good. His spirit sounding good. We had Richard Keys call in from Fort Davis or from Presidio County Jail as well. So, in fact we got some footage we're going to play after you get done here of some of our I guess field reporters that have actually drove 500 miles from here to get to keep current on the kangaroo court situation and all that kind of thing. So.
Well, that's, what Richard has done, actually both Richards have done, what the people who are standing for Texas, Republic of Texas, the freedom for Texans, because Texas used to be a country unto itself, because its so-called statehood is under different rules than any other state in the Union, Texas has that ability to make a decision, make a determination, and stop cooperating with the efforts to socialize us. Very seriously. Very seriously. If Texas will stand up and resist, it has the ability to set a chain reaction in place. Also, what's going on in Nevada? Nevada's about to elect Aaron Russo as governor. And Aaron's going to kick the federal government out of that state. There is this movement, if you can call it that, towards freedom. It's not a right-wing conservative anything. It's a movement towards freedom, toward, hey, I don't want you to take from my life and give to someone else. I want to have the choice as to what to do with the fruit of my labor. More and more people are saying that. More and more people are tired of the controls and the regulations, control being an advised word.
Well, I know there's a lot of people getting fed up with all of the like all the fees and the registrations and the permits and when you consider all the time that you spend in our precious lives, the life is precious and time is short. All the hassles that you have to do just to go out onto the road.
But here's the thing.
People are getting fed up with.
Here's the thing. People are getting fed up with it. However, and this is what I do. Okay, you really and truly can stop the vast majority of the taxes, the assessments, obeying all the regulations by simply stepping out from under the umbrella of those jurisdictions, the jurisdiction of those regulations. And it can be done. I know it can be done. I've been teaching people this for 6 years. Nobody who does it properly gets into any trouble because it's all based on, get this folks, if you're not aware of it, it's all based on contract law. You've actually entered contracts in your life to surrender your God-given rights. Guess what? You can sever those contracts, reclaim your rights, and the government has no choice but to either let you live your life or make an open, overt statement that they are not much better than the German soldiers in 1940.
Hey, Brent, what are some of the contracts? Get into some of the specific contracts.
The most fundamental contract is the possession of a Social Security number. Social Security number, as if you look at your Social Security card, it's right on there. It's the property of the United States government, the Security Administration. It's not your property. What you did when you signed an application, doesn't matter if your parents did it when you turned 18, it was as if you did it. When you signed the application for the number, you asked that federal property be attached to your body. This makes you eligible to receive federal giveaway programs, Social Security, welfare, food stamps, student loans, farm loans, things like that.
And all the strings that are attached with it.
Well, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Okay, you get the eligibility. You don't even ever have to take anything. The fact that you're eligible is a compromise. What you give up is your God-given rights. You say, I am willing to be property of the federal government rather than a free human being responsible for the choices I make. That's the trade-off. If you give back the number, then there's no more contractual nexus between you and the federal government, and they can't impose these regulations, which all come from corporate law. They don't come from the Constitution. That's why if you go into court and you say, the Constitution says this, the Constitution says that, frequently you will get, particularly on income taxes and things like that, you'll get a judge who will say something like, the Constitution doesn't apply in these matters. And you throw up your hands and you say there's no justice. No, actually, he's right. The Constitution doesn't apply because contract law is a type of law. It's civil law. Contract law rests outside of the Constitution. The Constitution restricts government. You have a right to enter any contract you want, so the Constitution doesn't apply. It becomes a voluntary choice, and if you sever the contract, then you become free of the provisions of that contract. That's the main contract.
And that's basically what you teach, right?
Yes.
Hey, Brent, I'm going to have to wrap it up here. First off, I thank you for mentioning the Waco deal, and I know you're on Fridays on shortwave, right?
Yes, I'm on Fridays on shortwave.
Please feel free to continue to. In fact, you can give our comment line out. If you stay on the phone for just a minute before they hang up, get the information to us, or if you can, and we certainly appreciate the plugs that you can do.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to meeting you. And I also want to get back with you the next few days or so when you have the time. I want to get you on a radio program as well.
Absolutely.
Now we can go on and on and on on that. Okay?
Fantastic. I'd love to, Jeff. And
Brett, you are basically the founder of American Sovereign. Is that what you call your organization?
No, the radio show is the American Sovereign. The organization is Freedom Bound.
Freedom Bound.
I'm the director of Freedom Bound.
Director of Freedom Bound, Brent Johnson.
And the show is called the American Sovereign.
Brent, I do appreciate you calling in, and we'll be in touch with you.
Thanks. I'll stay on the line for a minute.
God bless you, brother. Okay, let me just mention a couple of things here, folks. I see that we do have our guest here. Let me mention a couple of items. We got a little piece of critters on the Republic of Texas situation, and the kangaroo out there in the Republic of Texas. Okay. There's a couple of things I need to mention. Now, we all know about the ASAP program, or we're learning about this so-called Absent Student Assistance Program, where truant officers are going onto your property and violating people, from our perspective. Now, so we went down there 3 weeks ago, and many of us, and told the Commissioner's Court that we didn't like what was happening. Now, there's been a lot of things back and forth on some of the things in Commissioner's Court. Now, we happened to ponder onto a document that was actually, there was a story on this in the Austin American Statesman, I was told, on December the 11th. And it's from, if you can put it up here, get a close-up of it here, from Bill Alshire, who is a man that I've known for a long time. When I used to go on these debates as a congressional candidate, I used to run into him and talk to him. He's basically a nice fella. He's just naive like a lot of people. He believes in the system. He is the county judge here of Travis County Commissioner's Court. And we pondered on, through some of our associates, been able to dig up a document that he wrote. And we need to get a close-up of it here. It's called For Anybody Who Cares About Good Government. Right there it is, December 10th, 1997. Bill Alshire, Travis County judge here in Central Texas, here in Travis County. Now, basically, what it amounts to, folks, is now I've just scanned through some of this, and basically what his charges are, what his allegations are, what he is alleging is happening, is basically fraud. In fact, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the Travis County government being siphoned off through the auditor's office, different mechanisms being employed. He uses the terms fictitious vendors, where vendors or where the auditor's office is setting up these fraudulent accounts, creating fictitious vendors, fictitious names, siphoning the money off over here, over to other accounts. Just on and on. I'm not going to get into a lot of it because I'm running out of time here. But it's just political nepotism. Pardon me?
What names?
Okay, basically he's mentioning here Susan Spataro, who is the, well, I don't have it actually here in front of it. But basically what it amounts to is, yeah. Okay, they use, one of the things used is, who's it, Wilma Flintstone, or Fred Flintstone? Basically what they're doing is they're setting up fictitious vendors at the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just siphoning off accounts, siphoning off different things. They're also using something that's called political nepotism in the county. Basically, they're making up jobs, creating jobs for $60,000 a year, putting their aunts and their uncles in these positions. So they're doing that. They're stealing money. They're siphoning off money. And this is straight from Bill Alshire, the county judge of Travis County. Now, I don't know if he's just in a situation where he's mad about office or whatever. The point is, the allegations are hundreds of thousands of dollars of fraud going on here in Travis County. Now, the next question is, it's about 18 pages of all the scams going on. And basically what it amounts to is hundreds of thousands of dollars of fraud. And the fact is, I believe wall that the same people investigating themselves, nothing will happen. And the organization that we have, we're going to stay on these types of issues because stolen. Now you magnify this, all the counties of America, all the cities of America, you are talking about, folks, hundreds and hundreds of dollars fraudulently siphoned off by the American public to pay for these operations. Massive looting is going on right here in America, folks. Massive looting. This is what's going on. Houses, their cars. Folks, this is worse than right here document that Bill Alshire with and that's just his Patterson document. So maybe the Democrats, or maybe he's targeting Republicans, and maybe they're. So this is the allegations here are unbelievable. And it's very indicting our press release. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that his office apparently has found just fraudulently siphoning off from the taxpayers of Travis County. And this is what's going on. Now, we're going to have some people down there tomorrow that raise this issue at the Commissioner's Court. Right here. Right here, a man. I have a man in the studio here that hopefully is going to be one of them, Greg Erickson. He's going to have a copy of this document, and we're going to ask them the question: what is being done about these allegations of fraud going on down here? We want something done. We don't want no stonewall. We don't want you investigating yourselves. If the allegations in this document are true, there should be indictments for fraud. None of us can do this. None of us can steal people's property and then create jobs out of thin air and set up phony accounts. There needs to be indictments for fraud. If this document is true, if these allegations are true, there needs to be indictments. That's the bottom line, folks. Now, we're going to be going down, some of us are going to be going down to Travis County. I may or may not make it, but some of us are going to be going down there to talk about some things that have come up concerning the ASAP program, this document from Alshire's office, and a few other little surprises that we may have in store for them. Tomorrow, that's going to be February the 10th at 9 a.m. There's going to be all now when they expose the corruption to the people campaign. Yeah, we just come up with names here and make them up as we go, depending upon which. Now, I want to just throw this at you all too. Right now we're going after the county. We're going after the county on these things. The county has somewhere in roughly a $300 million budget. The city has a $1 billion budget, so you can just imagine all the fraud going on there. That's who we're going after next. We're not going to lay down to these people anymore. We're becoming aggressive down here, and we're going to start exposing fraud going on here. And this is what's happening. This kind of stuff needs to be exposed, and that's what we're going to do. We're not going to stonewall it. We're not going to investigate ourselves. We're going to keep coming out with updates, and as we get information down here, we're going to keep you updated as what's going on down here on all of these things. Now that's the county. We're going to do a little piece on the state here pretty soon when we give you an update on the Rick McLaren and the Republic of Texas situation. Now I received, but from a friend of mine, let's get a close-up of this. This is a very interesting document. It actually came from the Federal Reserve Bank, working paper, the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. Can we get that? This was actually handed to me a few days back. It's directly from the Federal Reserve. And it's amazing if you talk to these, if you do a little bit of research, some of the information that you can pick up from these characters. Now, basically, what this document states, and again, I don't have a lot of time to get into the specifics of it, but it talks about Senator Glass back in, let's see, it was on 22, 23 here. Basically, he was talking, had a private discussion with Franklin Roosevelt. Let's get a close-up of this. Here's this private discussion with a former U.S. Senator Glass. This must have been back in March 4th, 1933 to be exact, with the Emergency Banking Act. On March 24, 1933, the Emergency Banking Act was amended to authorize. This is kind of getting into the War and Emergency Powers Act. But basically what it amounts, let's get a close-up of this. This is a U.S. Senator Glass. We're talking to a Franklin Delano Roosevelt. A couple of days before they passed the War and Emergency Powers Act. Is that as good as we can get? You're just going to have to trust me on this, folks. I've read this section here. That's good enough. And basically what it's saying here is that this senator, that Roosevelt was saying to this Senator Glass, it was in Roosevelt's hotel room at 11:30 p.m. the night before the inauguration of the War and Emergency Powers Act. Basically, it's stating here that under the Enemy Trading Act passed during World War never rescinded to Congress, I, as President, will have the authority to issue such an emergency proclamation for the purpose of, as the Act says, of limiting the use of coin and currency to necessary purchases. And it goes on here basically stating that Roosevelt said a lot of people aren't going to like this. However, he's getting his directives from the Federal Reserve Board, and it says here, a lot of people, right here, it says a lot of people won't like it. I am sure such a proclamation cannot legally include banks chartered by the states. It is his opinion as of December 5th, 1932, argued that just the contrary, that the federal government could close state-chartered banks. Nevertheless, declared Roosevelt, I am going to issue such a proclamation. Basically, he's saying that they're going to do this thing. He knows people are going to be mad about it. It's unconstitutional, but he's going to pass the War and Emergency Powers Act anyway. And basically, this is how they've taken complete control of our money system with this act. And it's also was what created the. Thank you. Thank you. It also is what created these executive orders. Some to the tune of some 17,000 now have been passed to basically just makes the president a dictator. They can pass laws, put it in the Federal Register, and the Congress doesn't even vote on it. But right here is the documentation on that, straight from the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, Ohio. Folks, you want documentation, I mean, this is it. We've got the documentation. Now, before we get to our guests, we've got, who's all out there? Rob Patterson's out there? Okay, yeah, but let me, before we go to Rob, yeah, I know that, and Jim, okay. We got Jim Ellinger coming in here. He is a radio host on Co-op Radio, and he's also the information the public officer from ACAC. And we got Rob Patterson, who is a freelance writer with the Austin American Statesman. We're going to be talking about micro broadcast, or so-called pirate radio, that the FCC's coined it. There may be a situation here where where some of these issues we agree, some of these issues that we may not agree on a lot of issues, but on this issue, we've come to an understanding that, hey, this is a freedom of speech issue. So we're going to be talking about basically kind of a story, a little bit of what Rob Patterson did in his column here in the Statesman. Now this is in the current XL. It's called Radio Free Tejas. And I believe the micro broadcasting or so-called pirate radio channels are going to become very significant over the next 6 to 8 months due to the fact that there's a lot of information getting out that's not under license or under some type of corporate control domination. In other words, you get a lot of fluff on a lot of these things. Micro broadcaster, FM stations, unlicensed by the FCC, and the feds don't like it, basically are operating without a license. And we're gonna spend the rest of the evening on that with Mr. Patterson and Jim Ellinger. Now, before I do that, I want to just show these pictures here. Now, a friend of mine, Jimmy Ritter, went out to Presidio County Jail here recently, or it must have been Thursday and Friday this past week, and got some interesting footage. Now, they're following for us for the Jeff Davis Show. They're following the ongoing issue with the Republic of Texas. Rick McLaren and Richard Keyes, Greg Paulson, and all that bunch. I think it's an important issue, mainly because, in my opinion, they're political prisoners. And if it can happen to them, it can happen to anybody. Not to mention the fact that a lot of their ideas were attacking some of the institutions that are controlling things behind the scene. Now, in this picture, it shows Jimmy, and this is how close he was allowed to get his camera to near the court proceedings. Very interesting. This is now with OJ and some of these other type legal things. These people are actually allowed inside the courtroom, but not when it comes to the kangaroo courts, folks. When they got the kangaroo courts going, this is as close as you can get. They basically held him back for way back. Here's another picture of him. Way back, this is as close as you can get, as close as he could get to covering the kangaroo court going on with the Republic of Texas. Now with that, we're going to go ahead and take about 10-12 minutes here and play some footage that they got this Friday. And we will be back with Rob Patterson, the Austin American Statesman, and Jim Ellinger from Co-op Radio. God bless you.
It is called the Realistic Bomber Training Initiative, or RBTI. It's important. It's for the children, complete with maps, and especially interesting to the maps of how this area will be involved. What in the world? Oh, new airspace. Low altitude scoring site with an air. We don't want you flying in our airspace.
Ah, that is right, you know. We want you to be good little Nazis.
I wonder what MOA stands for on here. Military operations only, I
guess. They're being conducted now.
Yeah. They'll probably tell me in there somewhere what
Is this MJTF? Well, probably so. Back off, back off. Keep backing off. More? He wants to be in another county. Don't get in their way. Stay back. Is this all right, sir? Well, as you can see, they got me way back here.
Let me come around you.
Come around me. I'm sure he wants us in another county. Good morning, Sheriff.
Well, I thought that one old boy was going to get the shaft in his divorce case because the judge started reading out all
away from me, it's in the camera, but she won't go to jail.
I suppose being on TV with us is out of the question then.
You on TV with you?
Yes, sir.
With the Republican odds?
No, Jeff Davis Show in Austin, Texas.
What?
Jeff Davis Show in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
It'd be complete respect.
It might be this way, but it's not that way.
Well, we've only heard one side of the story on the TV show.
All I see is a bunch of nuts come in and kidnap some of my innocent, sweet people.
Yes, sir.
I want to put them in prison for life.
Well, yes, sir. That's if they...
Period. Bunch of weirdos. Gotta get rid of them.
We're on recess right now. On recess? Well, I thought I'd extend the offer just in case you wanted to have your side of it down there.
Well, the problem is that we're not his enemy. His real enemy is the New World Order crowd that's going to run over him when they take over. He'll be out on the street or in the concentration camp.
Well, how do you tell him about it?
I don't know. I wish
you don't have to find out the hard way.
We could give him that Vampire Killer 2000 book, but he probably wouldn't read it.
Yeah.
Let's get a picture.
You have one of your menthols.
Away from his cars. Told us to get the hell back as far as we can. Like I said, he wants us in the other county. Easy down.
Start walking down the street.
All right, go ahead. Walk back down toward the van. There you go, good show. Go the other way. That figures. Should have known that.
Get back.
Yes, sir.
Get back. Go.
Well, he followed his orders.
Building there, you mentioned something about
You wish that something could be done about real estate?
Ah, the real estate. Okay.
I'm going to step away for a while and let y'all get with it.
Okay. Don't ask me any questions. You just interrupt my train of thought. I'm getting old and I can only go one direction at one time. As it stands, and as I understand it, there is some property that the state has filed a civil suit for forfeiture of the property, and it's real property, and it's owned by Mr. McLaren. That property may be, and I haven't looked at it because, you know, I haven't been hired, and nobody else, as far as I know, has been hired to do anything with the deal. But that property may be the property that the embassy is on. Now, the problem I have, you know, is with it, you know, just from a personal standpoint, I've seen the ceasefire that they've got. The ceasefire is an agreement between the state of Texas and signed by Barry Caver, the captain of the Texas Rangers up there in Midland. Signed by him, allegedly with authority of the governor of the state of Texas and everybody else in this deal, to which says that part of the ceasefire, part of them giving up, part of the agreement for them surrendering and, you know, everything going the way it's gone so far, is that the Republic of Texas would be allowed to retain its flag and be allowed to retain its embassy. Well, if the state's now going to go scarf up the embassy property, I think that's a violation of that agreement. But as it stands right now, there's nobody in there representing the Republic or representing McLaren or representing anybody else to fight over this property that they're trying to get a hold of. And, you know, I guess somebody needs to do something. It's also my understanding that, and this is what I've heard, I haven't actually, you know, gone up there and seen, but it's my understanding that if you want to go up there to where where the embassy is, you got to go through Sheriff Steve Bailey and get permission to do so and all this other stuff.
Big no trespassing sign right in front of the Rose House.
What someone, you know, I guess somebody who's higher up in the Republic probably needs to go out there and claim the embassy. If that's the official embassy, somebody needs to go do something about it anyway. Otherwise, the state is probably going to get a judgment of forfeiture, and you know, they'll sell it or do something with it.
Generate some revenue.
Right. Or maybe do undercover operations through there. Do military, semi-military Texas Ranger actions or something. Training actions. I don't know what they'll do.
They'll be real neighborly.
Yeah, I'm just being facetious.
It's not that bad.
I'm being facetious about part of this, but I don't know what they'll do with it. But they may forfeit it and then sell it somewhere. So.
Have you heard me singing?
Hello, Austin, Texas, and we are back. Rob, you might want to scoot in here just a hair if you could.
No, drag it over there.
Just to make it look good. Okay, folks, now we're visiting here, and I'm going to go ahead and do this because I know Rob will. We're visiting with Jim Ellinger, who's a co-op radio host on 91.7, and Rob Patterson, who's a freelance writer with the Austin American Statesman. He's not down here speaking for the Statesman, but he is employed by the Statesman. I wanted to make sure I got that in before you did. Okay, now with that, we're going to be discussing, by the way, we're also live on the internet, folks, all lowercase, www.texasbestseminars.org. texasbestseminars.org for you website browsers. www.texasbestseminars.org. to hear the live broadcast of the Jeff Davis Show right now. Okay, folks, with that, let me introduce the guest. Jim Ellinger, Co-op Radio, and Rob Patterson, Austin American Statesman. What we're going to be talking about is an issue that's near and dear in my heart due to the fact that 3 or 4 months ago I got involved with something called what the FCC coins as pirate radio, unlicensed, FCC unlicensed radio broadcast going out over the airwaves. Now, I think I have a pretty good panel here to discuss this subject. In fact, Rob follows the radio beat for the Statesman. By the way, let me ask you, did the K-News go off the air? Or
no, they K-News and Kick, they went to with a Latin format as of last Thursday.
So does that mean Joyce Isaacs is off the air?
Joyce had already sort of faded out there, unfortunately. Oh. At least that's what the owner there told me. Said she had been doing some stuff, but just didn't keep up with it. That's what he said. Now, Joyce may say something else. Joyce always has something to say.
May very well be watching, so.
If she is, hi, Joyce. Hi, Jim.
Okay, folks. Now, let me just go ahead and open it up for you guys. Now, with the, let's talk a little bit, whoever y'all wants to take it first, as far as what so-called pirate radio is, and then, you know, the battles. I know that, Jim, you said you've had some battles with it.
Nah, I've been following it mainly. Actually, I think the guy you should let answer that question is a Statesman reporter who's written extensively about it. This guy right here, Rob Patterson.
Well, we're going to get there.
Ask Rob that question. What the hell is pirate radio?
Do you do publicity independently?
Independently is the only way I can do it.
Well, it's a movement that's going on in America today, all across the country, as well as around the world. But especially here in America, there must be hundreds, if not thousands of. Most of them prefer to call themselves micro-broadcasters. Pirate is really not coined by the FCC. I think pirate is something that the fans of it came up with, and my headline writers like it. And I kind of like it too. It's sort of sexy. It's
catchy.
Yeah, it's just, and you know, I like the notion of it kind of implies an outlaw, rebel kind of stance to it. And then there are also, I guess, your friend Keith Perry calls himself clandestine radio. So there's a number of terms for it. But people with small, anywhere from really 1 watt and below all the way up to maybe 90 or 100 watts. Low power FM transmitters, putting all kinds of different programming on the air. Could be anything from talk to music to it's just a wide variety of stuff. Community affairs. Some of it's all people local. Some of it's like what Keith is doing. A lot of what's available there from satellite downlink or off the internet. So there's a whole lot of it going on.
Basically, what it amounts to is unlicensed, FCC unlicensed. Is that why, in your opinion, it's news, or is it just?
Well, it's news because it's news. It's news because while it's happening here, it's happening everywhere else.
And it's illegal as hell.
Yeah, and it is illegal. And it's news because it's interesting radio. Sometimes it's very rough and raw radio, but it's there's a lot of interesting stuff being put out there through the. You're just going to hear vitality. I think you won't hear necessarily on the
commercial crap stations.
Radio.
Yeah. You can't say commercial crap stations, can you?
Well, I can say that, but I think there's some good commercial stations. There's probably some crap public stations. Probably some,
undoubtedly
crap pirate stations. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Right.
And sometimes crap is very entertaining.
Let me see the stories he gave.
He did lots of them.
Yeah,
in fact, I'm an old news hound. For those of you who know me, I like to do a lot of media and stuff. And here's a front page story in Austin American Statesman that Rob wrote. It's been on the front page of New York Times. It's been on CNN scores of times. This pirate radio movement's a big deal in America, and this is not just some hyperbole. There's upwards of 800 of these things now estimated to be on the air, coast to coast.
Oh, and there's actually much more than that.
I suspect there are.
Several thousand, yeah.
Right.
Several thousand.
Excuse me.
Which one is it now? Which story is it?
It's right. Yeah, excuse me. Right there.
That was from about a little, just a little
more than a year
less
ago.
than a year ago.
Right. And there's a lot of these things popping up, and of course, Jeff, is yours is kind of a politically motivated thing. You don't feel a lot of the information that should be getting out in the mainstream media is getting out, and a lot of other folks who don't necessarily share your political views.
Back up there.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sure. Give you a chance to do it. What is happening is that people from the far left to the far right are all taking advantage of these micro-powered radio stations that are popping up here in Austin, San Marcos, Leander, San Francisco, New York, Tampa, Portland. They're all over the country. And the old argument that they interfered with commercial stations or aircraft or the military. The FCC is not even using that argument as much anymore because these new solid-state micro transmitters, which are not much bigger than a cigar box, the frequency doesn't drift, they don't fade, and they're extremely low powered. So they do not interfere. And if you can just buy one with Radio Shack parts, how are you in fact going to stop this movement?
Yeah,
go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was going to just amend what Jim said. It only costs about $1,000 to get one of these or put one together, somewhere in that neighborhood. So it puts radio in the hands, theoretically, of your average citizen. If you live in a certain part of town and might want to put up a little radio station for your friends to listen to in your neighborhood, you could do that. Although I wouldn't urge anyone to break the law because you might have to suffer the consequences. But
the consequences are.
Well, the consequences can be serious. I mean, you can
tell our listeners.
You have to look at my article there to get exactly. But I think
how
it's
serious.
2 years in jail and $10,000, a potential fine, maybe $20,000 for broadcasting without a permit. So.
But in reality, Rob, how many people have been put in jail for doing it?
Well,
I'm just saying those are the potential causes, but you could do it.
Deal in Tampa where they just had some SWAT members or something.
Yeah, I've read about that a bit on the internet, and I think it was the FCC came in with local police, and that sounds like an overreaction to me. It's kind of a victimless crime. I don't think you really need people with guns.
I agree with that.
We're starting to agree with him.
Yeah, I know.
That's dangerous.
Until we get to the solution, then of course we verge in different directions.
Now we actually have some footage. Before we bring Keith, we're going to bring Keith up in just a little bit here. Here's his sign because he's already been visited by the FCC.
Yeah. Okay, does he have? It doesn't look like he has FCC on there though.
Federal officers.
Federal officers of the FBI, IRS, HEW, environmental, and other. Okay.
So that's his sign as you enter into his driveway.
You mean another local kids that come by and shotgun holes in it? That's good. It must work.
Now, as you mentioned in your Bob, where was that one we just did?
The cover?
Yeah. No, the one that's in this week's XL.
Might be right there.
The one he just did here in XL, he mentions, Rob mentions that...
no, that's
is that his tower?
Yeah, there's his tower. It's about somewhere between 60 to 70 feet.
Nice guide monopole tower.
Broadcasting from. And that's his tower. And it actually does have a pretty decent range.
Now, both Rob and I have actually, as part of kind of covering this story of pirates, we've both actually heard the station. And of all the pirates around town, I don't know if Keith Perry's listening or whatever, but he's got the most clean signal, nice footprint. He gets a lot of coverage in North Austin. And it's at 95.9 FM. And if you're just driving up on the road, 183, and hit 95.9 FM, boom, there he is.
Right there it is.
Nice clean signal.
And the next, I guess, what we got next here, we got, the one thing about Keith, and you mentioned in your story, and I can't even find it, but he mentions,
We'll just bring it up, and I should be able to remember. I hope.
Keith takes. Well, this is one of one of our bumper stickers that we put in. I love my country. It's my government. I don't try.
Right.
That's one of us. I guess our right wing bumper stickers. But anyway, we'll get on past that. He makes very careful, as most micros, that they don't interfere with other signals.
Yep.
Now we've got.
Nor should they. And
then we've got some footage of just how close he is in doing that. He's actually got some monitored. I don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see where, if his signal sprays off into something else, or, he's tracking exactly where his signal's going. So he takes great precaution in...
so he's being a responsible engineer.
Yeah. And I guess we'll get to... But go ahead, Rob. That's not it, but go ahead. There it is right there. I don't even know what that's called or anything about that, but that's basically... He's pointed out to me if he stays within, so much of a range, then it verifies that he's not...
Well, the old FCC argument that it could cause spurious transmissions and interfere just isn't floating anymore. And a guy out in Berkeley who put on Free Radio Berkeley, which operates at 104.1 FM, has already been raided a couple times. It's gone to federal district court to keep the station on the air and won.
Well, he hasn't won exactly, but what has happened
He's
is
held off.
there was a stay of the injunction to shut him down. That's a good one.
Right. Hey, it's the creep. You know what he said was lie down, not lie.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Let me.
But
here's Rob's. Here's your story that's in the in this week's Excel. Basically, as you mentioned here, Rob, that as you point out, Keith was visited by two representatives of the FCC, accompanied by a Leander police officer, who asked to see his transmitter and told him to cease broadcasting. This was back in
that was back
June of '97, yeah.
D-Day, June 6th.
July 4th, Independence Day, he came back
up,
as you mentioned here, with new frequency and higher power.
Right. Yes. And more attitude.
Let's get a. Now this is in. I forget it. But this is in this week's Excel, and but anyway, Rob, go ahead with. I mean, I know you got.
Well, what do you want to ask me about with pirate radio? Jim and I have all kinds of things we can say about it.
Now, what do you do? You're getting well. Let's go ahead and now. Basically, are you on a personal basis? Are you basically you're basically think that even though it's illegal, that it should be acceptable in society?
It's something I would like to see the FCC find a way, the government find a way to allow, if possible. I think I like the idea of it, especially at a time when most of the radio stations in America are now going to be owned by very large companies.
In Austin.
One of them here in Austin, but I actually think they're they're about as good as they get with those people.
Steve Hicks, Capstar, now owns more radio stations than anybody in history. At last count, what, 385?
325.
325.
Is what he told me last.
So a guy in
week.
Austin owns 325 radio stations nationwide. I'd be willing to bet he probably couldn't name every city
his company,
let alone reflect the local community.
Yeah, his company, Capstar.
Capstar.
Should be free to the people.
Yeah, there's the older argument from and I'm an old FCC, and I shouldn't say FCC buff, but radio buff. I don't want to sit up. An old radio buff, and I've studied it, and originally radio and TV were considered the property of America, and that you could not own a license. You could hold the license to serve the community, but you couldn't own it. Now you see stations that are not even on the air yet, like 105.9 up in Round Rock, which just got flipped for $8.5 million. There's not even a station there yet. So what happens at little bitty markets, like San Marcos by way of example, the nice hippies down in San Marcos have put their own station on the air, Kind Radio, big write-up in the Dallas papers, they've been in the New York Times and all, and these guys have been visited by the FCC too, and all they're doing is doing local community stuff, just like Co-op might be doing in Austin. And they don't have any ads, it's all volunteers. They've had the mayor on, they've had the Chamber of Commerce on, they had Congressman Ron Paul on last week, and they're just acting like a community radio station, but they're illegal as hell.
So their case is rather interesting too, because some of you may be aware of these folks. They used to have the Hayes County Guardian, which Southwest Texas State decided they didn't want distributed on campus. So these folks went and got a case that went to the United States Supreme Court to have their publication be distributed on campus there. So they're used to fighting these fights. Now what they discovered is a lot cheaper to spend $1,000 or $2,000 on transmitter and some equipment and go up on the air than print up a newspaper, especially with paper costs being what they are. So it's almost like the old deal about, well, if you own your own printing press, you can have your freedom. Those who own the press have freedom of the press.
Right.
So these days, people who own transmitters can actually get on the air. It would cost you many millions of dollars to get on the air with any significant power anywhere in America today if someone was going to sell you one of those radio stations, which are being bought up by a number of different very large conglomerates.
And you've mentioned to me, Rob, that you think that's dangerous.
I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. Like I said, I think the folks we've got here in Austin, Capstar, are probably among the better of them because, Steve Hicks told me he believes that localization in radio is something that is very important to good radio, and that's why he's in probably medium and smaller markets rather than large markets. But it's going to be like, everyone's going to be shopping at the same convenience store, and everyone's going to be listening to the same radio formats all over America. And one of the beautiful things about this country, one of the things I like, if you go to southern Louisiana, you learn this, is that there's all this diversity around the country and local culture That's a especially wonderful area for it. And here in Texas too. And if we lose that, we're losing something that's real important. And I think if we lose the sense of communities being able to communicate with themselves, we're so bad at communicating already. We just stare at the TV. And if we lose these...
Not this show.
Yeah. TV too.
That's actually a good point, yeah.
You know, we're going to lose some of that diversity. And
all right.
That's sad.
God. The other thing is, what works, now these folks down in San Marcos, like Rob and Jeff were saying, they've already been to the Supreme Court. They've actually had a case go up before the United States Supreme Court on a free speech thing where they were handing out the Hays County Guardian, just a little liberal, hippy-dippy environmental newspaper down in San Marcos, and they were just giving it out on campus, and campus cop came by and said, "You can't do that, get out of here." "Oh, it's First Amendment." Bullshit, and back and forth. Went all the way to the Supreme Court. And I might note, the attorney that fought for him was Patrick Wiseman, who was a fine, dignified Texas gentleman who just passed on last week. He was a great guy. But these guys down in San Marcos were not particularly intimidated when some guy from the FCC goes, "FCC, you're in big trouble." And they go, "We'll see you in court. We've already been there." And they are some tenacious, scrapping guys that I don't think are just going to give in. And what's interesting with
They've actually been writing letters to the FCC saying, "Here we are. This is what we're doing, and we want to let you know we're not interfering with anyone, and we've staked our claim, and we want to know how we can get a license to do what we're doing, how we can make ourselves legal with you."
Right. What does it take now? About a couple $100,000?
Oh, it cost me $250,000.
Millions.
Yeah.
Millions. And I mean, there are very few. The 105.9, which a couple of pirates here in Austin are up on, which just went into the hands of Steve Hicks. Actually, Steve Hicks personally, not Capstar, because of the nature of the transaction. That's one of the last C2 licenses left in America to be had in terms of something that's not on the air. Stuff that, you know, the FCC is selling off all the available, or working out the differences between any people competing for available frequencies and getting them on the air, and it's a clearinghouse. So.
Yeah.
Wall Street's real hot on it right now. Wall Street loves radio. Good investment. We'll see how long that lasts. Well, the bubble is probably going to burst at some point.
Can I ask what this is up
Sure.
here?
That's from my collection. I'm into radio, as I've said, and I have the Austin Airwaves archives or collection. And that's a pirate radio station in Brussels. It's been operating for a number of years. They've been busted rather aggressively by the Italian Brussels police, but are back on the air. They're in a squat, which is an illegal housing area there. They've been on the air for years. They're about 40 watts.
Look at that, they're on Inquisition Street. I like that. Certain poetry to that.
My cousin Maria?
Marie who?
Yeah, I bet she's not my cousin.
We're talking about Jim's cousin Marie. She does not have a micro broadcasting radio station. But micro broadcasting in some parts of the country is really widely spread. Down in Miami, there's
I was told
40 or
50,000, man.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds a bit much.
Excessive.
But I mean, in the Miami area, it's been said there's something like 40 or 50 micro broadcasters playing a lot of Latin music, hip hop. I mean, it's really in the ghetto communities, and these people who are, they're getting the music that is not on commercial radio stations on the air, and they're selling advertising. And they're saying this is a First Amendment freedom of speech issue, because these people cannot afford to advertise on large radio stations. Your little ma and pa bodega. Well, they can get our radio now and get some advertising. And, one likes the idea of that. Although again, if you're violating the law, you might have to pay the price.
That's right.
We have been doing this.
It's the law.
As you mentioned here in your column, Republic Radio. We have been doing live broadcasts on international satellite, soon to be shortwave.
Mm-hmm.
And I have actually received some calls from micros in Miami and California that are picking up our signal. So there are some out there.
There are a lot of
verified too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably are more than 1,000 right now.
Safe bet.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of them it's
Stephen Dunnifer from Free Radio Berkeley has been churning out kits for transmitters. There's a lot of other ways to get them, and it's spreading like wildfire. It's spreading to the point I don't think the FCC has the manpower or could get their sodden bureaucracy moving to be able to stop it, which is. It makes it a rather interesting public movement when you think about it that way. And again, Jeff said this at the top of our segment here, that all I am saying here represents my opinions and does not represent the opinions or editorial policies of the Austin American Statesman.
Well, certainly doesn't represent mine.
I know,
Well, mine either. So.
Well, nor should they, Jeff. You know, if every editorial represented your point of view, it wouldn't be very. It'd be pretty boring for you. You'd have nothing to do.
That's it. All right, now we got Keith on. You all.
All right.
Keith up here real
Hey,
quick.
Keith.
Can you hear us, Keith?
Can you hear me? No, I want to bring up Keith.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
All right, quickly.
We'll talk to whoever. We're nice
Hello,
people.
you're on the program. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Hi, I had a couple of questions, actually.
You got a quick question or comment?
Yeah, first of all, I'm curious about the range of the micro broadcast. Do I need to turn my TV down? Sorry.
About that big.
A couple of blocks, a half a block, or...
Oh, no. Miles.
Well, yeah, it really depends on a number of factors. You know, the wattage you're broadcasting at, height of your antenna, and where it is. And there are people here in Austin from Keith, who's got a good 15-mile or so footprint.
That's a 15-mile radius
from
the
miles.
tower.
Yeah.
So you're covering, many square miles. I know of in South Austin, a 1-watt transmitter that goes, I'm just guess 20 or 30 blocks, and it's only a few feet in the air, and 1 watt. It's not very powerful.
Yeah, probably didn't.
I was speaking about probably more of a setup like that. It looked like the guy in North Austin had
yeah, his is a pretty big operation. You can broadcast at 1 or 2 watts and go 8 or 10 blocks. It won't be very loud on your radio. That is, when you turn to whatever, you need to turn it up, and when you tune away, all the other stations will be really loud. But if you can get any height at all, 20, 30, 50, 100 feet if you're lucky on a building or a water tower or a big tree, the only substitute for power is height. And that's what Keith Perry has done. His signal is not only about 90 watts, which is pretty hot for a pirate, he's also at about 60 feet on a rise. So he covers all of North Austin pretty much at 95.9 FM. Down in San Marcos, the hippies down there, they're at only about, and they're just wonderful, kind folks too. I just love them. All them are smoking joints on tubes going down the Guadalupe River. And they're at about 40 watts at about 40 feet. And if they could just get up another 20 or 30 feet, they could double their coverage.
But they don't want to. They want to stay at within. Their claim is that San Marcos radio station has been stolen.
Plundered.
KEYI, Oldies 103.5 was licensed to San Marcos, but obviously it's here out of Austin, and I've never heard a mention of San Marcos on that.
Thanks for your call, brother.
Yeah.
I also was wondering, do you know anything about like micro TV broadcasting? If that's something that's
low power, call Jeff Nyberg.
Yeah, call
he
Jeff
may have a
Nyberg
few licenses left to sell.
At the Havana Hilton, ask for the guy with all the baseball bats at the end of the hall, Jeff Nyberg, and ask him about low-powered TV.
Yeah, I don't really know about that subject. I know that there was a fairly seemed to be a fairly hot little thing about 10 years ago when our local what would we call Jeff? Local rabble rouser and
trust fund baby.
Yeah, Jeff Nyper was into it. But
actually, you're watching low-powered TV. One of the big things about this is that if you can't get on the air, then you kind of like, well, God damn it, I have a right for my opinion too, and you kind of force the issue. Here in Austin, we've got real good access TV. So people like Jeff with a minority opinion. Right?
Well, that's what you said.
Yeah,
okay, outside the mainstream.
Jeff is hoping it'll be the majority.
That wasn't meant to be condescending. But opinions outside the mainstream can get on ACTV regularly and express their opinions, take calls, and talk to folks. The other thing is about low-powered TV. TV is very technically difficult. Radio is pretty damn easy. You can take this little micro cassette recorder, tape something, and put it on a microphone on the radio station. I do it every week on Co-op. TV has lights, crews, switchers, playback. Tape's expensive. I don't know of any pirate or low-powered TV stations in America that aren't commercial operations.
When Stephen Dunifer, who Radio Free Berkeley first went on the air, he had a transmitter on his backpack, and he would go up in the Berkeley Hills with a little portable cassette player, and that's how he did it. It's really easy to do this if you want to do it. I wouldn't recommend breaking the law once again, unless you feel like you want to suffer the consequences. But anywhere here in Austin, there's places you can get it. If you can get transmitters. In fact, a good place to start looking is alt.radio.pirate on Usenet news groups. A lot of information there, and it keeps getting busier all the time. I'm checking that out about 2 times a week and really enjoying both the debate on FCC issues as well as just the news about who's doing what out there. But there's people selling transmitters on there all the time. It's really easy to get a hold of one. and it's fairly cheap, and you can have your own radio station. But if you do go up somewhere, make sure you don't interfere with a commercial broadcaster, because that'll really get them upset, and that'll get them
take them off.
Yeah, and that will get them calling the FCC so I can get rid of this guy.
What's this here? This is another one now.
This one's a sporadic one. This is a kind of a legendary one.
Sporadic.
This is the fat one, K-Fat, and it was also nesting at 105.9 a little while ago. K-Fat was originally a country outlaw station like Coke was in the old days out in Gilroy, California.
Played a lot of awesome music.
Yeah, and you might recognize the artwork there of Michael Priest. And that's an occasional pirate in central Austin. I don't think it's currently on. Some of these guys kind of pop up, get a little attention, and pop back down.
Yeah, or they like to do it just to see, the radio buffs sometimes like to do it just to see, hey, if I put this antenna up, how far will I go? How far can I be heard? Because there are people who like playing with this stuff.
Yeah.
I remember,
it's fun.
Yeah, I remember when I was about 8, 9 years old, a friend of mine had,
I can't remember when I was 8 or 9.
I have a hard time with it myself, but had a little, thing in his little studio in his station. Did, I forget it, part of a Watt AM thing that went for about, maybe 5 or 6 houses. But, that's what he would do for fun, is he'd get down there and he'd spin the 45s and pretend he was on the radio.
Okay, we got Keith on yet.
No, man. I want to ask a couple more questions.
Okay.
Clear the line so I can get on.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask these and you can comment on them later. First of all, I'd like to say I really enjoyed the speaker you had on the radio, first of all, when your program first came on.
Brent Johnson.
I beg your pardon?
Brent Johnson.
Yeah, he had some great ideas, and basically I looked at that as, it boils down to free will, which is God's gift to us, right? Also, I hope that you'll be sure to let us know when he's going to be on your radio program so we can hear more from him.
I'll do that.
Also, can you tell any information about if the anti-war protest is getting organized at all?
Well, yeah, let me make a comment on that. It looks like Desert Fraud 2 may be getting started here. So it's time for people to step up and to start raising our voices against it.
Right, I agree completely. I know that Greg had said something on his show the other day about organizing that. I haven't heard anything else about it.
Yeah.
Also, is there still going to be a press conference at City Hall tomorrow?
Yes, there's going to be some people. No, wait a minute. There's the Commissioner's Court. There's going to be a bunch of people down there.
At 9 a.m., right?
At 9 a.m. protesting different things, from documents from Al Shire's office and different things. And
hi, Bill.
Do you know this fella?
I know Bill Elshire. Yeah, great guy.
Oh no, I thought you were talking about the caller. Yeah, we've got. Yeah, there's going to be some and that'll be covered on 17. So. And then, of course, I think at 11:30, a bunch of people go down to the City Hall and basically call the City Council people a bunch of crooks, and that's on Channel 6.
Right.
So we got a lot of activities going on here.
And then you're on Alex. Okay, and one more question. I'm sorry, Beast. I'm sorry to have so many things.
Okay.
Is there a website that you have anywhere where I can download some of the documentation that you've been showing, so I can have it in black and white to show other people of mine, so, I don't get laughed at so often.
Stay on the line, and actually, just 370-9558. Leave your name and phone number, and somebody will get back with you. 370-9558.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate the time. And also, I did have to catch you with Kirk earlier, and
Kirk-o-matic.
Yeah, that was interesting too, man.
Thanks.
Hang in there.
God bless you, brother.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have Keith on yet? We need to get Keith on. I need to bring Keith on to
this. Lord, here comes Alex Jones.
Come on. Is Keith going to do it?
Like a moth to a flame.
Keith, are you there?
Okay, we're ready to get a hold of one of the local micros. I prefer to use the term micro, Rob.
You're actually correct.
It's I don't like this pirate business. That's the FCC.
Well, now Keith, no, I don't think the FCC are the ones who really came up with that. I think it's probably invented by
the pirates who were actually on Radio Caroline, which was.
Well, actually, yeah, I remember the old pirates back off the coast of England back in the 60s and 70s, and.
So it's that off-border broadcasting.
Right.
Are we ready?
Yeah, there was one off of.
You need to clear the lines because they're kind of hung up. They're both lines.
How can I clear the lines? Yeah. I don't even have the board here.
There was also a pirate. While we're talking about it, there was also a pirate radio ship off of New York in the '80s when
that was a good one.
When I was living there, and I also
Keith over the air to get off one of his lines because he has both lines busy. I can't get.
Well, maybe he doesn't want to do it then.
Well, he can hear you right now.
Keith, well, whatever. Keith, get off your Leander lock and safe number so you can call in here, brother, or we can call you.
Keith, we want to talk to you.
Yes, we want to get first-hand information. I mean, this guy knows radio. It's an impressive.
Hello, North Austin.
Yes, Keith.
Are you driving up 183?
Very technologically knowledgeable, which helps when you want to try and do something as large scale as he's trying to do there. There's been pirates all over the world. Another one I heard in 1973 off the coast of Israel was the Peace Ship, which was run by Abby Nathan, who's the heir to the New York Nathan's Hot Dogs fortune. And so he had the Peace Ship there, and he was broadcasting music and saying, hey, Arabs, Israelis, everyone get along. And about a day or two after the Yom Kippur War broke out, he skedaddled out of there once the Israelis said, gee, we might just mistake you for, Syrian ship. We just don't know. So I don't think he ever went back up after that. But this is stuff that you hear stuff on the radio every day, and you may really like it and enjoy it. But this is the stuff that's kind of like it's that little kind of stuff out of left field that just makes you go, wow, isn't this neat? Someone's doing something different and trying to stir things up, and I always like that. I try to stir things up.
It's gone by different names over the years too. Down in Central America, I go to a lot of radio conferences.
I guess we're not going to be able to get Keith.
We're waiting for Keith.
Right. I guess we're not going to get that done. Okay, but go ahead. Okay.
Well, I was going to say, pirate radio has different names. Micro-broadcasting, as you're saying, Jeff, is probably the right term because they're not trying to hide. That is like pirates that kind of scurry around. Guys like Keith Perry and the folks down in San Marcos, they're looking for publicity. They're on the front page of the paper. And they're making a political statement.
I haven't met this. What's his name? Joe Patak.
Yeah, Patak.
Is he a nice guy? Is he? Or?
Yeah, for a dopehead, yeah. And
yeah, Joe Patak, and then there's also Zeal Stefanoff.
They're real nice guys.
Yeah.
They live that laid-back San Marcos lifestyle. I think we'll retire.
The great thing about them is they really are into their community in a sense of community. And
how long have they been on the air?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. About a year. 1 year. Yeah, getting on the air. They've been visited once and have been more or less left alone since then.
Now they had a little flare up with the city for operating a business in his garage.
Yeah.
So it went to a jury trial. You'd have loved it. And his attorney made the analogy. It's like a community garden. That old lady at the end of the block's got some extra land, so she starts a garden. A neighbor comes by, helps out a little bit. Comes harvest, there's enough for everybody, so to give it out. Is that a business? And the jury bought it, and they let him off on a 12-0 vote.
Yeah, it was for violating, residential zoning, and they're not running a business. I mean, they're not taking any advertising. They're just letting people, on the air. It's, but they're always ready to fight the good fight. In terms of this.
Bring it on, come on.
It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, what happened back in November is Judge Claudia Wilkin in San Francisco had basically did not allow the FCC to proceed with this injunction to take Stephen Dunifer, Radio Free Berkeley, off the air. And Radio Free Berkeley's been sort of the lightning rod of the movement. Dunifer is a very intelligent man. He's also very adept in radio, and he's been able to stay on the air without the FCC shutting him down for some time. And then basically, Judge Wilkin asked the FCCs and their lawyers to come back and say, hey, make their arguments for why this should not be allowed. Because she felt that Dunifer and his lawyers had made some significant First Amendment issues there. And another actually interesting issues that what Keith had mentioned is that is a sort of a states' rights angle to this, since he's not broadcasting out of state. That I believe he had said in the original FCC charter or something of that effect. I haven't looked this up yet. It was only supposed to govern interstate radio.
Intrastate.
Yeah. Well, inter, right?
Yeah, that's
between, not intro, which is interstate.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I believe I'm right. Call in and tell me if I'm
wrong. So he's
wrong.
saying that the FCC, a federal agency, does not have authority
has no jurisdiction
for something within the states. And clearly, even at 90 watts, there's just no way he's going to go outside of Central Texas.
Yes.
And now, and I've talked to some other pirates around the country.
What are the poor fellows on the edge of Rhode Island going to do about that argument?
Yeah, that's a tough one for them. Well,
but it's a good one. It's a good one for
Rhode Island worried about it themselves. But it's an argument I haven't heard other pirates put forth. And as this thing finally gets explored through the courts, and there's going to be a Supreme Court ruling or some higher court rulings, and I compare it to a free speech movement or even the hemp movement.
I do too.
Where, you got all these people smoking pot, it's illegal. How do they stop it? You bust a few people, you set up an example, people continue to do it. It was like the Civil Rights Movement or the First Amendment movement during the Vietnam era days. And more of these things are coming on, and I too, do a disclaimer and say I'm not advocating breaking the law. I'm following this as a story. I work in a commercial media and legal media, and but these things, the risk is relatively minor. Again, I'm not advocating it, but if you operate an illegal radio station right here in Austin, 1 watt, 10 watts, 100 watts, and you're playing the sort of stuff you want to hear, music or talk or whatever, and you get a knock on the door to give you a free one. They say, hey, you turn that damn thing off, you don't turn it back on, and then they leave.
Yeah.
I mean, other
However,
times you get a free
what
shot.
What happens in the second one?
Well, you might ask Keith Perry that, or the guys down in
However,
they come back with the guns drawn.
They will come in and they whether they have the right to or not, I'm sure Jeff would argue with me here, but they will come in and seize people's equipment and seize
stereo equipment,
ancillary equipment, and I believe at Tampa, the Party Pirate, they raided. I think they seized some things that really probably weren't a part of their broadcasting activities,
like the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt you all a minute. This production has deteriorated. There's no close-ups. There's buzzing going on here.
It's like pirate radio, Jeff. It's kind of loose and
I don't
fun.
like this. This production is completely. Forget Keith. Obviously, we're not going to make the connection. And we got 4 minutes left. There's buzzing going on in here.
Oh, there's the buzz. Boy,
Buzz
you
is
speaking
gone.
it. Just take care of it like that. Damn.
I know.
I'm impressed.
They'll make their trains run on time.
Now, I know we've only got one open line because we got the internet. We got the other deal. But still, I mean, this is. Okay, I want to give you all a chance to make a closing. First, I want to invite you all back, and as this thing, I personally believe, guys, that this is going to become in the next 6, 8, 10 months a very hot issue nationally because there's a lot of issues and information that whether people agree with or not don't agree with that are not there for one reason or another, Rob, are not being covered by the so-called mainstream, and people want to hear other piece of information, and I think the people that are in control of things, that's just my opinion, don't want a lot of this going on. So I think you're going to start seeing the other side become more aggressive.
Well, I think, the NAB just adopted their Board of Trustees just adopted a resolution asking the FCC, the government, to set up a task force in order to stop this. I'm sure anyone who pays millions of dollars for radio stations probably not real happy about, some kid,
getting it for free.
Yeah,
in fact, that's what's going to happen at 105.9. The frequency that the people have been, a lot of pirates have been active on 105.9 in Austin and San Marcos area because it's an open frequency. Well, that frequency just sold for $8.5 million, and you got some guys down in San Marcos that are already there saying, we were here first. We're going to serve the local community. And some guy up in Round Rock just paid $8.5 million. There's going to be, push is going to come to shove on this story. It's going to be a fascinating story to watch. It's going to play out right here in Central Texas in part 2.
Any closing comments, guys? We got about 2 minutes.
Well, I think
before you do, Rob Patterson, statesman, Austin American statesman, good to have you on down.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good to see you, Jeff. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing I find really great about micro broadcasting, pirate radio, whatever you want to call it, is that, and then we see it here just in Central Texas, but if you look at what's going on in the country, it's a total diversity. It's people on the far left, the far right, people who probably could care less and just want to play. They just want to play rock and roll. It's people like Dunifer in California and down at KIND who want to do something for the community. Who, at Radio Free Berkeley, they got people from 6 to like 80 years old on the air doing shows. People want to empower people, give them access to the media, show them the power of radio, and I think that's great, and the freedom to have many issues debated, discussed, information out there that may not be getting out there otherwise. And so I think it's bound to be a good thing if there were found some way that this wouldn't get people in trouble. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I'm sure we're going to see more of it, especially in the technological age we're in. I mean, people are hooked up to the internet. They've got little pirate radio stations. They've got all kinds of things going, and you obviously are mastering that pretty well, Jeff. So it'll be interesting to see how it folds. It's a great pre-millennial drama on the American stage.
Yeah, I agree. Jim?
It's an interesting phenomenon. Stay tuned. Look for alternative sources of information. If you're heading up north, tune in to 95.9 FM. If you're heading south, tune in to 105.9 FM and check these pirate stations out for yourself. We're not talking about something far away. It's right here in Central Texas.
Founder of the local
That's true.
group. And,
That's true.
And you're my buddy. And
That's
so
right.
is Nick and all the others. And they're all my buddies too. But it
Well,
takes somebody to
you've been
step
really
up to
good
the
to
plate.
us. You've been really good to us, George, and been a leader in public support for our cause there.
So in 1992 when you started it, or
Right.
91, you came to Austin and you started this organization, and probably 99 out of 100 people you talked to said, "This is, what kind of idea is this?" Why did you decide to start CATS here in Austin?
Because it wasn't there. Unlike the mountain, which is you climb it because it's there, I founded this chapter because it wasn't there. I helped to start the San Diego chapter. I got involved in CATS. I actually thought I made up the consumption tax in place of the income tax and in place of the IRS, which is important. And until I realized, I discovered this organization, Citizens for an Alternative Tax System, and they were focused solely on eliminating the income tax, replacing it with the national retail sales tax, and getting rid of the IRS. And so I said, I'm in. Helped start the San Diego chapter, and then I moved to Texas to be closer to my parents, who are getting a little long in the tooth now. So I wanted to be near them, and there was no chapter here, so I started one up.
Great. But, clearly everybody who's ever dealt with IRS comes away with kind of a bad taste in their mouth. I've dealt with them, and you go in and you have at least I felt like I had absolutely no rights, and the people treated me, not all the people. There's clearly a lot of good people who work in the IRS, and so any of the people who work for the IRS, we're not against you, but we're opposed to the system, and power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and unfortunately, the IRS has almost unlimited power. And
it is. It's really atrocious. Our rights are really being trampled by the ever-expanding powers of the IRS. One fellow by the name of Dennis Burnham wrote a book entitled "A Law Unto Itself," and that's a very fair characterization. Recently, just within the past 12 months, a girl was working at a restaurant called the Jewish Mother. It's over on one of the seaboard states on the East Coast there, and she was caught embezzling $30,000. So the owners of the restaurant filed charges against her and what have you, and apparently she retaliated by telling the FBI and IRS and other people that this restaurant, which is a legitimate business, was dealing with Jamaican hitmen, and they had heroin stacked 5 feet high up in the walls in the back room. And so rather than check out her record, she did have a criminal record, and just talk to the local police who knew that she was being charged with these people. They actually went during the restaurant of the hands of patrons, made everybody stop. Went to the manager's house, took him out a hammer. He was in the shower at the time. They took him out at the point of a pistol and to his head, and arrested him, and all the. 5 months later, they picked up a rental truck, dumped everything in the middle of the road, no more investigations.
let's get, what is the national retail sales tax? What's the difference between that and the income tax? What is it?
Well, it's a simple philosophy, really. We advocate that we should not be taxed for what we contribute to society. We should be taxed for what we take away from society, which is what we consume, what we buy. And it's a lot easier to track what you buy rather than try to define what is income and all these different kinds of definitions, which have made the Internal Revenue Code so monstrous. And
I was reading today that there are 20,000 pages in the Internal Revenue Code and another 200,000 pages of of case files. So there's over 220,000 pages of IRS code.
It's incomprehensible, and it's a lot of it is contradictory. Nobody, I think, understands the whole thing. There are people who specialize in one area or another, but every year there's an organization, I forget what the media segment is, but they conduct a survey, and they get about 40 different accountants, and they give them an example, an anecdotal what if financial situation, and they typically all come up with different answers.
Right. I just saw one where a bunch of people at Washington University of St. Louis had 48 different accountants, and they asked them to do a problem, and they had literally 48 different answers as to what they should be, and between $16,000, $16,400 to $48,000, and these were all high quality folks who you spend a lot of money
well
with.
Educated.
Yeah.
But nobody can understand it. That's just it. And it's subject to interpretation, and unfortunately it's subject to the IRS's interpretation, and that can really cause you problems.
Yeah. So basically what this is a consumption tax at the point of retail sales.
Retail only, and that's important to understand. The national retail sales tax taxes goods and services only one time. Some people say, well, it's like a value-added tax, but that's not so.
And a value-added tax is a type of tax that they have in Europe,
yes.
the common market, where there's layer after layer after layer of hidden taxes.
Hidden taxes, and that's a big problem.
And this is really important. This is not a VAT tax. This is
True.
A tax that everybody can see and understand, and it's right up front.
Right there on your receipt. When you buy something, the cost of the federal government is going to be right there where you can look at it, right on the receipt.
Okay, so basically and everything is taxed at the retail level.
Correct. Under H.R. 13,
which is the Towson.
The Towson Schaefer Tax Act of 1997 provides, it's 50 pages of tax code as opposed to 20,000, 200,000, and it provides for a tax on retail transactions.
Now, when I talked about this 5 years ago, everybody would go, "Oh, it's just so regressive." And I'd say that the biggest question people have is, they say, "Well, what about the regressivity of it?" Which is kind of the politically correct term for what we have right now. And
well, politically correct is far from the facts, as it most often is. That's the problem. There's nothing more aggressive than the current tax system we have, because corporate taxes, people are sedated and seduced by politicians who say, "Oh, we're going to sock it to the rich. We're going to double up on corporate taxes," and that's so insane, because corporations don't pay taxes. It's just another cost of doing business that they pass on to consumers. One of two ways: higher prices or lower wages. Either way, it's coming out of the consumer's pocket, and corporations just pass it on. So there's a lot of regressivity built into the current tax system, but we just never see it.
And clearly the present taxation system relatively hits the middle class the hardest.
Absolutely. The low end of the income base is they're getting entitlements and that sort of thing, and abatements, and there's not much in the way of taxes.
This actually also, the present system also hurts the poor through loss of jobs and economic growth, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Sure.
And it's really incredible. I mean, people have all these ideas, but in fact, this system is not regressive, and actually it is a very positive progressive because of something that Towson and Schaefer put into it. Why don't you tell them about that?
The rebate system.
Yes.
Our plan provides for a rebate on the tax amount on minimum living expense standard. So Congress decides what it takes to raise a family in this country. Bare minimum. You're surviving if you're $15,000 for a family of four, just as a guesstimate. I don't know exactly what the figure is. And that would be subject to Congress interpretation. If your Social Security or your check would be supplemented by this amount from the government, so you'd be refunded for any taxes up to minimum Right. It's just survival spending. Above that, you pay taxes in proportion to what you spend. So I think it's a very fair way and a simple way to get the same amount of revenue that the federal income tax collects now.
One of the things that is also very important is that this also changes the underground economy right now. There's a lot of underground economy happening with drug dealers and other things that are happening, and where people are not reporting their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And with the national retail sales tax, everybody pays their fair share.
Everybody pays your tax. If you're a pimp or a drug dealer or otherwise making a living under the table, and I personally don't have a problem with that, except for us raising my taxes. So sorry, I'm not going to be able to put up with that.
Right.
But the national retail sales tax provides for a fairer way of paying taxes because everyone goes and buys something.
It's estimated that approximately 15% of all taxes in the United States are either underpaid or not paid at all. Is that correct? Or is it higher than that?
I don't know. I know that there's about $125 billion underground economy.
Yeah.
And that was a couple of years ago by the IRS's own estimate. So.
Another thing I've read is that two different reports, Kotlikoff and who is at Boston University and another professor at Washington University at St. Louis, has said that it is estimated that it costs $600 billion a year just in preparing tax returns.
I think it's, well, there's a couple of figures being bandied about. One is 300 billion, and the other is 618 billion.
Let's use the lowest number.
Yeah.
The $300 billion.
If it's only $300 billion,
which is more than the whole Defense Department.
Right, and more than General Motors and Ford and Chrysler all put together.
This is not million.
No,
this is the B word. This is the B word right here.
Yeah. That's the equivalent of the tobacco settlement.
And the amazing thing, does
that's every year.
Does that $300 billion, if it's $300 billion, not $600 billion, let's say it's $300 billion, does it make our roads any better?
No.
No. Does it teach our children any better? No.
No.
Does it keep our environment clean? No.
This is the cost of calculating how much tax you pay.
It's incredible.
You spend $300 billion to figure out how much tax to pay in Temple Center.
And then they tag you and say it's not right anyway.
Right.
Another thing that's really important is something I keep talking about a lot, is that even though our national deficit is $5.5 trillion and we're basically bankrupt, another economic indicator people don't talk about is our monthly balance of trade. Since 1983, the United States has had an average of $12 billion a month, negative trade. We've been sending out $12 billion more to foreign countries than we've been taking in. And what made the United States rich is that we were a great industrial nation. We made things for the world, and now we're becoming paupers. And with the present income tax, it hurts us. With the national retail sales tax, it will create jobs so that we can export more. Is that correct?
Right. European countries, such as France, take their tax off at the border, so that their goods come across to our market at a reduced rate. We do not do that. Our income tax stays on if it's produced in this country, whether it's exported or sold in our own market. So we're at a disadvantage in our own market against exports, and we're at a disadvantage in foreign markets because we don't raise our tax off.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Billy Towson was saying, I heard him saying that within a couple years it could create 1.6 million industrial jobs here in the United States just by creating more of an economic impulse so that we can sell to the Germans and we can sell to the Japanese and we can sell a few to Bill Clinton's friends in China.
Well, just imagine what you could do with so many thousands of dollars that it takes to pay the accountants and what have you to maintain the records. For 7 years you've got to keep records, and you've got to calculate the humongous tax return. If you're Chrysler, your tax return looks like about a 5-foot stack of paper, and there's this isn't minimum wage people pushing a pencil and counting beans to calculate that. If you can, under the national retail sales tax, you'll be free to reinvest that income into the business, increase wages, develop better products, and improve your business, which would create jobs, exactly what you're talking about.
Now, who would administer this tax?
Well, it's proposed that it would be administered by the states.
Right.
There are a few states that don't
There's
have
5 states that don't have a sales tax.
And so they could, those states could contract an adjoining state to administer their federal
Or have the
tax
Treasury
for them.
Department do it.
Or, yeah, whatever.
Hopefully
is-
another
is-
state would do it, or
yeah.
they do it themselves.
Right. But it's so easy. There's 46 states or so that have a state sales tax, and this would just piggyback onto that.
Okay, so clearly there's just loads and loads and loads of information about this, and we don't have the time
Mhm.
to talk about it in full depth. But what we do have is that we have the time to introduce this subject, and we want people to get a lot more information about it factually. If
Right.
they want more information factually about it, what do they need to do?
Well, you could call 916-FAIR. It's the local CATS chapter maintains a 24-hour number. It's a hotline.
Give that number one more time.
916-FAIR, 916-FAIR, and you dial that number and you'll hear a recording, get you some information, and get you started.
We have a very active chapter here in
We
Austin,
do.
Texas.
Yeah,
and the
this
first
was
thing is don't believe a word, believe us, but ask your questions and ask all the tough questions that you can, because this change would be a monumental change. But clearly, in my mind and in Ashley's mind, it would be the best thing for this country. But you need to ask the questions and get the information. So call 916-FAIR. Now, the next thing is a lot of people go, yeah, right, this is pie in the sky. But in fact, we have a lot of national support for this, don't we?
We sure do. And if you look at our website, www.nrst.org, as you see on your screen there, you just go out there and explore if you have the ability to get out and surf the net. Get up there and you'll see a lot of information. One of our supporters is Bill Archer, who's chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and that's
down in Houston.
Right. He's a good Texas representative.
No. Well, he's the. We've got some calls waiting, but I'll tell you what, we've got so many guests coming on. I'm sorry to all the callers because there's so many good things we want to talk about here. But if you want to call Ash, can they call you, or they can get you through FAIR or 916-FAIR?
They're going to get the local chapter through 916-FAIR,
Great.
but my email is on that on the website, so I answer all the email personally and
now this is not just a
that come up.
Republican or a Democratic thing. It's a bipartisan push, isn't it?
This is about freedom, and that's across all political, social, and economic lines.
Here in Austin, we need to do several things. One is that people need to get educated about it.
Right.
2 is that they need to call FAIR. They need to call local Austin Cats. We need to write letters to the editor.
Right.
We need to call Lloyd Doggett and call Lloyd Doggett and write him letters. Write letters to the editor.
Yeah.
Join local Cats. And what else can people do?
There's a lot that can be done. There's telephones. You can make telephone calls for the chapter. You can give information out in public venues, and just contact the chapter, and we'll find out what your skills are, what your interests are, and we'll put those things to work. We want people to be happy volunteering, but you have to do something. And people tell me, oh, well, this doesn't have
Snowball's chance.
Yeah, at least. But I tell you what, it has absolutely no chance unless we do something. So if you're willing, as I am willing, to do something to make sure that it's not my fault if it doesn't happen, then that's all we need. If I had 1 out of the 5 people who've told me that this didn't have a good chance behind me all the time, then this would be a done deal.
Ashley, give your best 2-minute summary.
My best 2-minute
summary of why we need a national retail sales tax.
Well, it's about freedom. Our founding fathers established that we would not have an income tax. The Supreme Court said over 100 years ago that it was unconstitutional to have an income tax. The 4th, 5th, and 8th Amendments protected us, protected our freedom of speech, prevented us from testifying against ourselves in public, and protected our houses, our persons, our possessions.
4th and 5th Amendment, right there.
And these rights have been violated gradually by this insidious income tax. We can defeat it, and we have a great method for doing that. We have a fair way to collect the same amount of revenue, and it will help us restore freedom in this country, and that is the primary reason. If you can't believe in it for today, believe in it for your kids, because there is something going to change about the income tax. we are going to have a huge change in the way we collect taxes in this country, and it's up to you to do it the right way.
We're back, as Jeff Davis says. Hi, this is George Humphrey with my good friend Bob Larson. We've had quite a night here. We've had Galen Ross, who is just a fine gentleman. I've gotten to know Galen in the last year. We've had my friend John Emery, who sings at my church, and he does music. We've had George Ashley Lewis. And now they say politics make strange bedfellows, but here in Austin, Austin's a pretty friendly city, and I have a very good friend that I've made in the last several years is Bob Larson, and Bob was the man who defeated me in 1990, and Bob got kind of a bad deal, not a bad deal, but he had kind of a rough trip when he was on the city council, but that's part of the service, and we've gotten to know each other pretty well, and we don't agree on everything, but one of the things, Bob is always very, very upfront and really loves this town and really wants us to do what's right and live within our means. And Bob and I have worked on several different issues in the last couple of years, and I'm very honored to have Bob on the show. Hey, Bob.
Now I remember where I know you from. George, thanks for having me here. You know what time it is, don't you?
It's 9:44.
I should be in my jammies by now.
Bob owns the Old Timers Clock Shop, so if any of you have any clocks that need repairing, Bob has got one of the finest shops there is. It's over on 38th Street, and he does a great job.
Here. Sir, do you have any comments about the IRS? Oh, you'll have to speak up real loud, because I'm not sure, they may not let me come onto the road. Is it a loving organization? No. Not many comments.
I love them. I love them.
Any comments about the IRS? Not too many people want to talk about the IRS. They're scared. They're scared. Any comments about the IRS? See, they don't want to go on camera and make any bad comments about the IRS. Any comments about the IRS? See? It's all fear. Look at this. That's been 5 or 6 comments about the IRS.
Then I hope they don't audit me.
See, did you see the fear in his eyes? How about you, sir? Any comments about the IRS?
Hurts worse and worse every year. Do the same thing you do.
What do you think about the IRS? See, tinted windows. He's really scared. What do you think about the IRS? That's right. Smile and pay. What do you think about the IRS? Wow, what is that? Like a 12 people in a row?
Trouble.
Yeah, he said they're definitely trouble. We got a bunch of cars lining up now. Yeah, any comments?
They're certainly there, aren't they?
They certainly are there everywhere, I'm afraid. Would you like to see the current tax system scrapped, or how do you feel about it?
Nope.
Just revised, maybe?
It's just lovely as it is.
It's just lovely as it is. I think there was some sarcasm there. Either that or he's an elected official and he gets a lot of that money.
He didn't pay.
Hopefully we can get him to back up here. Gotta pay him. You don't, though. It's voluntary. I could prove it to you. What do you think of the IRS?
Yeah, they're cute.
Cute. I think the agents would be happy to know that. What do you think about the IRS?
Collect our taxes every year. What do you say?
Just collect our taxes every year. Another one. Yes, Infinity Q45. There's a lawsuit brewing against the IRS for causing this kind of mayhem. Any comments about the IRS? What do you think of the IRS? Uh-oh. Angry taxpayer. What do you think about the IRS? No comments? I bet you if I had the camera off, you'd talk about it, wouldn't you? You're afraid they're going to come bust down your door trying to get that money, huh? Do it. You know it's voluntary. I can prove it to you. Nowhere in the tax code does it say you have to pay income tax. They're just, I think it's more apathy and trade imbalance between ourselves and China. I don't think she wants to talk to us. There you go, the U.S. mail's even against the IRS. What do you think about the IRS?
He's a liar.
IRS. What do you think about the IRS? It's great. Any comments about the IRS?
Not a tax return.
Oh, he's actually delivering standard mail. That's fantastic. Not a procrastinator. Why he chose the day to deliver mail, I don't know.
That's all right.
Any comments about the IRS? You know what this reminds me of? Slaughter? This reminds me exactly of that. A cow is a very dumb animal. If you've ever seen them go to slaughter, they put them in pens and they gradually narrow and narrow and narrow the cattle down until they're in a single file. They line them up and they take them to this. It's very similar to a gun. It's like a stud gun, and in lieu of a bullet, it has a 2x4 stud, and they put it on the cow's head and they blast it, and the block causes brain death instantly, but their heart still beats for a while and their other internal organs. And then they string the animal up and slit its throat while the heart's still beating so that the blood pumps out more quickly and it's easier to clean the meat. This reminds me exactly of that. If you look out here, you'll see how the cars are very wide and they start funneling into a single line, and these people are just lining up one after another. Bam! Right in the head. Bam! Right in the head. One after another. And the cow behind the first cow just watches buddy get blasted, but he doesn't care. He steps up. He wants to be next. That's how dumb a cow is. And I must admit, today's going to be my last day of being dumb, because after I get home, I'm going to file electronically for the last time, and then I'm detaxing. No longer will I be a cow lining up for slaughter every April 15th. But that's exactly the analogy there is. Well, quite frankly, it's a little scary. What do you think about the IRS?
We love them.
They don't love you, I promise. Good, everybody's honking. Think about the IRS. He said that he owes them. What do y'all think about the IRS?
Love them.
It's for the children, you know. It's for the children, you know. Ma'am, what do you think about the IRS?
I think it's fair. The Bible says to render unto Caesar what is Caesar, unto God what is God.
Amazing. I'm very impressed. Thank you, ma'am. What do you think of the IRS, ma'am?
I love the IRS.
Why does everybody say that?
I don't know. There you go. Her true feelings. She said it sucks pond water after she got off camera.
Get him.
Any comments about the IRS?
Oh, no, not really.
Big brother.
What do you think about the IRS? What do you think about the IRS?
I'd rather not say I owe it to you.
Maybe we can talk to you off camera.
Yeah.
Ooh, a lot of anger in there.
Get her.
What do you think about the IRS? She doesn't think at all. What do you think about the IRS? Oh, he flipped the bird. Flipped the bird. Good man, good man. What do you think about the IRS?
They're making a lot of money.
Oh, you got that right. What do you think about the IRS?
Crazy, I hate it.
What do you say?
It's crazy, he hates it. He said, oh, I'm sorry, he said it's crazy, he hates it. I noticed that woman earlier was quoting Bible more than your tithes. If you are a believer and you read the Bible carefully, you'll know that that it's recommended that 10% of your income amounts to your tithes. And for a woman to advocate the IRS and say that it's fair, and she's a believer, I think that's interesting when the IRS gets more money than God.
Okay, get him.
What do you think about the IRS? Any comments?
I don't really care to pay taxes, but I guess it provides a service. So.
Thank you. Any comments on the IRS? No. Of course not. He's got that big, nice car. He doesn't want to lose that. IRS. I don't want to lose that nice car. Any comments about the IRS? What? Any comments about the IRS? Go Warren. What do you say? No comments. The nicer the car, the less the comments. You don't want to lose that little. Any comments on the IRS?
They're giving me money this year, so I love them.
Oh, no, actually you gave it to him. You just gave him too much.
What did he say?
He said they're giving me money this year. He doesn't understand. That's his money. That's his money they're giving him back. But he, like most people, con artists, when in fact it's our federal government using the IRS who's really pulling the con game here. Not only is the income tax system voluntary, but even if you choose to volunteer, you still end up getting screwed, because when you pay in too much, that's what a refund's all about. You've paid in too much money, and they're giving you the money back. In other words, they have borrowed that money from you interest-free for a year, and again, you, not to beat the analogy to death, but you line up like cattle and thinking that you're really getting something when you're not. Or you're getting something, you're just getting your own money back. Any comments about the IRS? Of course not, he drives a BMW. I'm telling you, I bet you we can go back and watch the edit of this tape, and I bet you all the people with nice cars don't comment, and the worse the car, the more the comments. I guarantee it. Any comments about the IRS?
What can you say? We don't have a choice, do we?
Actually, you do. I can prove it to you. Stop on over here. I'll just really show you. I know a gentleman that hasn't paid taxes 13 years, never had any problems. I could prove it. Watch Access Television. Oh, watch it there. Any comments about the IRS? None at all? You don't need to be afraid. They won't come bust down your door, I promise. They love you. See, you have children. They especially love you. Comments about the IRS? No. See? Told you. BMW. Any comments about the IRS? Nada. Sir, any comments about the IRS? Any comments about the IRS? Oh, you got that right. She said they're taking our money. Actually, she's just giving it away. Well, IRS? Oh, you don't though. It's voluntary. I could prove it. Nowhere in the tax code does it say you have to pay your taxes.
Yeah, but or else I'll go to jail.
No, that you won't. I promise you. Any comments about the IRS? Oh, about the IRS?
No, not the
Oh, okay. Any comments about the IRS?
No.
Sir, what do you think about the IRS?
Love them.
Sir, what do you think about the IRS? I promise, they're not watching this tape. They won't come bust down your door. What do you think of them?
I think I'm going to get some money back.
Really? Do you realize that that's your money and you just paid? Do you know they borrowed that money interest-free for a year? Do you think that's fair? What would you say if I told you that the income tax is actually voluntary and nowhere in the tax code does it say you have to pay federal income tax?
I'd say I wish I knew if that was true.
It's true. What do you think of it?
I wish I could keep my money.
Oh, very good. I wish you could too. You could buy it. Very good. It sucks you dry. What do you think about the IRS?
I just love giving them money.
Oh, do you really? Come on. It's for the children, though. What do you think of the IRS? Oh, he doesn't think. That's part of his problem. What do you think of the IRS?
Oh, I just love them.
Do you really?
They're great people.
Come on. What do you think of the IRS?
God bless America.
Oh. I think the IRS curses America. What do you think about the IRS? Sucks. Very good.
What did he say?
He said the IRS sucks. Sucks the money right out of your pocket. What do you think about the IRS?
They're there.
They're there. They're there taking your money. What do you think about the IRS?
Take my money.
They take your money, that's right.
Get her.
Ma'am, what do you think about the IRS?
I'm not going to say on camera.
Be a lot better if those kids got the money, wouldn't it? Ma'am, what do you think about the IRS? Oh, goodness gracious. What do you think about the IRS?
I think it's a very great place. They're going to take my money.
He's gonna steal
That's pretty good. What do you think? You know, he said something about it being a great place or something like that, or taking his money. I'm not sure. I couldn't hear because some of the noise. What do you think of the IRS?
I got to pay it.
You don't. I could prove it to you. It's voluntary. What do you think of the IRS?
No comment.
Yes, you can see the fear in his eyes. Afraid they come smashing down his door. What do you think of the IRS?
Oh, I think they're taking too much money.
I agree totally. Thank you very much. What do you think of the IRS? Ma'am, what do you think about the IRS? She wasn't thinking at all. Blank stare. We'll talk to you later. What do you think of the IRS?
You don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah, it's voluntary and I can prove it to you. Pull to the side up here and I'll give you some information. What do you think of the IRS?
Oh, it's great.
You really think it's great? You're being sarcastic, aren't you? You know you're being filmed and you think government agents are going to come smashing down your door if you say the wrong thing.
I don't do this right now. Thanks.
Very good, thanks. Hey, why don't you come to our conference this month? Lieutenant Beck of the Travis County SWAT team is going to be there being our featured speaker. It's the Downsized Government Conference. We have it the last Sunday of every month, and we're going to be talking about local law enforcement and the recent influx of federal money into local law enforcement and what we feel like is very much the potential for some federal control of local law enforcement. We're trying to invite all the APD, Sheriff's Department, anybody we can get down there.
I think you need to probably get the commanders and the chiefs to answer those questions.
Actually, you know what? I do Sheriff Frazier. Sheriff Frazier waited till the last minute to pay her taxes, and we talked to her for about 12 minutes. She was very kind, and she spoke a little bit about the use of Starflight by law enforcement, and she gave us some insight into that, and I invited her to come down to the conference. Lieutenant Beck has been very forthcoming. He's been very much a gentleman about the whole thing. I could tell you when I first approached him about it, he didn't want to do it.
I think Chief knew that would be something that he would probably...
Actually, our cameraman Mike and... Really? Hang on a second. Can I get a card from you, perhaps? A couple quick questions? Oh, you won't get in trouble, I promise. Oh, well, let me introduce myself anyway. I'm Steve Lane. Hi, Steve. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, just off camera, seriously. Are you guys going to only show, like, the hemp guys when you're doing their little banners, or will you actually
somebody else is covering this.
Oh, okay.
I'm just covering late filers.
Oh, that's okay. Because I noticed earlier, NBC, they made it a point to do their interviews with the hemp guys right behind them, you know, instead of intelligent people that know that tax system is actually voluntary and people have been duped for a long time. They only wanted to talk to you about the scruffy-looking hump people, hemp people.
I'll be sure and tell our other crew to come by.
That was pretty angry. They'll probably come back out here for the 10 o'clock news.
Oh yeah, they'll be here.
The sun is... Oh, okay, he just delivered regular mail. What do you think of the IRS? She doesn't know yet. A grown adult human being doesn't know yet. What do you think of the IRS? What would you say if I told you that the income tax is voluntary and I could prove it to you? There was a gentleman who wrote letters to all the senators and congressmen and asked them if they could point to the spot in the tax code that said you have to pay income tax, and if they could find it, he would donate $50,000 to a charity of their choice. Would you believe nobody took him up on it?
I suppose if that's the case, it wouldn't surprise me.
Actually, Senator Dan Burton wrote him a letter and said, "You're right, it's not in the tax code." What do you think of the IRS? Necessary evil. I don't know about that. Very evil, very unnecessary. That's what I think. What do you think about the IRS? Take too much money, but they're okay? It's a little contradictory. Bye. What do you think of the IRS? Very good. He's starting to think. He said, how do we get rid of them? Another fearful individual. Got the tinted windows and everything. Got a nice house, nice vehicle. Worried about the IRS coming and taking. She almost spit on the microphone. What do you think of the IRS?
Here's my 2 cents.
2 cents. I'm sure those kids use that money a lot more than the feds. What do you think of the IRS?
There it is.
There it is. I noticed your middle finger was showing. What do you think of the IRS?
Come on, man. You still own business in this town and pretty much got shut down paying a nice 40% tax.
There you go. What do you think of the IRS? Very angry taxpayer. Lots of angry taxpayers today. What do you think of the IRS?
This is my ritual, paying taxes at the very last minute because I hate taxes.
You don't have to pay them. I could prove it to you. What do you think of the IRS? You could buy a lot of nice new clothes with that money.
Sure I did.
What do you think of the IRS?
You don't want me to say that.
You're gonna need that money to pay all that extra cigarette tax. What do you think of the IRS? But it was your money to begin with. It wouldn't be so bad. Instead, they threaten you. What do you think of the IRS?
I don't like them.
She doesn't like them. Feeding a bird. What do you think of the IRS? What do you think about the IRS? Yeah, don't be afraid. I know you got a nice car, but I promise you they won't come and take it.
Who are you? What are you doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Steve Lane. I do a public access show from time to time called The Freedom Report. I promise you, they won't come and get you. You know, we did a 12-minute interview with Margot Frazier on the other side. She waits till the last minute to pay her taxes as well. Watch public access. That interview will be on. What do you think of the IRS?
I don't.
You don't? You could buy a really nice new car with the money you're paying out. What do you think about the IRS? Complete changes? Just a revisionist. Hasn't studied history very well. Wants to revise the IRS, make it better. They've been trying to do that for about since its inception, and you see what we ended up with. We need a completely new tax code, without a doubt. What do you think of the IRS?
I try not to think about them.
Oh, but you have to, don't you? Yeah. Ma'am, what do you think about the IRS? The IRS.
Gotta pay him, I guess.
What would you say if I told you it was voluntary? What do you think about the IRS?
Fine with me.
Hey, it's voluntary. I could prove it.
Voluntarily doing it.
Yeah, he's lining up like the cows do, watching his buddy in front of him get slaughtered. What do you think about the IRS? Told you. Very nice vehicle. That's a nice dog, sir. Whoa, breaking traffic laws to pay his taxes. Who's that? Another broken law. What do you think about the IRS? You must be scared to violate traffic laws to pay your taxes. What do you think about the IRS? You must be pretty scared to violate traffic laws to pay your taxes. What do you think about the IRS? They suck. Definitely. They suck the money right out of you, don't they? Watch it. You almost hit. Any comments at all? Would you like to see a new tax system?
Absolutely. I think a flat tax is the fairest thing.
It would build to what we got now, though. What do you think about the IRS? Beautiful dog. Any comments about the IRS?
No, thank you.
They almost think I'm a government agent. Like we're gonna keep these videos on file with their thumbprint down at the DPS branch, so that we know who all the conspirators are, the anti-government extremists.
it out.
Any comments about the IRS? What would you like to say about the IRS?
Oh, they're a fine organization.
Do you really believe that, or are you being sarcastic?
No, they are.
Do you like the current tax code the way it is?
No.
No? What kind of changes would you like to see?
They have some changes on the floor now that they're going to be next year, and I think they're good.
Is there one in particular that you like? How would you feel if I told you and could prove to you some documents actually on the other block that the income tax system is actually a voluntary system?
Well, it is, really, because there's so many people. I believe they said there's 10 million people that did not file income tax, so it's a voluntary situation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Would you believe me if I told you that there was a gentleman named Irwin Schiff who wrote an open letter to all the senators and representatives in Congress saying that if they could find the area in the tax code saying that you must pay income tax, that he would donate $50,000 to their favorite charity, and he didn't get one taker?
I would believe that.
Actually, he got a couple of letters. The closest one was from Senator Dan Burton, who I believe is on the Senate Finance Committee, if I remember correctly. And he said, "You're right, sir, there actually is no area in the tax code which mandates that you must pay federal income tax," but he said, "We do have the 13th Amendment." That was his response.
Right.
Did you know that the 13th Amendment was never properly ratified?
No, I did not.
Did you ever hear, like from your parents, that in 1933, when we moved off the gold standard, all citizens had to come and turn in their gold, with the exception of like gold jewelry or rare coins, turn them in and trade them for dollars? Did you ever hear anything about that?
No, I don't remember hearing anything.
Well, no, I don't mean remember. I just, obviously your parents were quite young.
Because I still have some gold coins of my own.
Yeah, but of course those are rare. Those are rare. But yeah, actually in 1933 you had to go turn it in. It was under the guise of the Depression, and you had to go trade gold for pieces of paper, and that's when we went off the gold standard, and that's when things really started going south in this country. Had you ever heard about that? 3 years old, really?
Yep.
But you'd never. Do you have any parents still alive?
No.
You might ask some individuals that were alive at that time. You'd be surprised. I think a lot of people are shocked today when they hear that you had to go down and take something of yours, and had to. It was a law, and give it to the government, and they gave you pieces of paper in return. But it happened.
I did.
Hey, I appreciate you talking to us. Thanks. Oh, not at all. Are you, because you're scared? So, oh, okay. Any comments about the IRS? Another angry taxpayer. BMW, guarantee you won't speak to me. See? Told you. Every BMW today, ladies and gentlemen, not one person has spoken to me from a BMW. Those are the people that they feel like, anyway, they have the most to lose.
Okay, thank you. Keep it covered. Bring those taxes.
What do you think about the IRS? Oh, you give him your money. He doesn't think that much of me. I wish he'd give me his money. No comment? Are you perhaps afraid? Like maybe the IRS will come after you or something?
Nah,
Do you like the current tax system?
try to pay for the freedom that we got.
Do you really think so?
Oh, yes.
First of all, if you would like to, can you tell us your name?
My name's Roger Blakely.
Hi, Roger. It's nice to meet you. I'm Steve Lane. Tell us, what do you think about the current tax system?
It's unfair, especially for the lower income people like me, because I'm a student right now.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, I got to pay taxes, and the rich seems like the rich people aren't paying enough taxes.
What would you think if I told you that I could prove to you from the IRS tax code that the federal income tax system is a completely voluntary system and that you don't have to pay federal income tax if you don't wish?
I've never heard of that before.
Would you believe that there's been individuals that haven't paid taxes for over 15 years, never had any audits, never had any property seized, things of that nature?
I've never heard of that, no. I've heard of the IRS coming down on people and sending them to jail.
Where do you hear things like that from?
One of my friends nailed by the IRS, took away his house, took away everything he owned. In fact, had to file for bankruptcy in the long run.
How did you feel about that?
I think it stunk, man.
Does that feel like a free country?
Yeah, did that seem like a free country to you?
Hell no.
How would you change the current income tax system? Would you
get a national sales tax?
A national sales tax, and why do you advocate such a program?
Because one, to be more fair and more equal. None of this bureaucracy.
Can you give me some specific examples of how it would be more fair?
For instance, if you bought like a basketball, they would charge like a 10% tax when you bought the basketball. No forms to deal with at the end, nothing.
What about the flat tax advocates? How do you feel about the flat tax?
Flat tax is not as good, I don't think, personally, because once again, there's a inequity in terms of it hitting the lower income people more than the higher income people.
It's interesting you say that. Now, see, there's a lot of people who actually feel that the consumption-based tax that you speak of, the national sales tax, actually hurts the poor more because they have to spend more on everyday goods, that sort of thing. Would you like to see a consumption-based tax that perhaps if you make less than a certain income, you wouldn't have to pay sales tax at all, or do you believe everybody under that system should pay sales tax?
Lower income people should pay less.
Pay less. So it'd be a graduated. Excuse me, not to put words in your mouth, but are you saying like a graduated sales tax?
Correct.
But doesn't that bring bureaucracy back into the play again, because then you're going to have to fill out forms saying how much you make, etc.?
In a way, yes, but it should be a simplified form. You shouldn't have to go through 700 pages of IRS rules and regulations.
I agree totally. Is that how many it is? 700 pages?
Close to that amount. There's gobs and gobs of IRS rules and regulations. The reason why I know a lot about this is because I work for a law firm that deals with IRS type issues.
What do you do for the law firm?
I'm a mail clerk, file clerk.
You'll be an attorney before too long, though, won't you?
I don't think so.
What are you studying in school?
Forestry.
Forestry. Now are you an advocate of the city government purchasing thousands and thousands of acres in an effort to preserve quality of life, as Mayor Wonderful says?
I think it's good, but it should be done on a private type basis.
God, there's still some excellent people left in this world, I swear to you. So you're not opposed to the idea of buying up land in an effort to preserve water, but you are opposed to using public funds to do so.
Exactly.
Do you think that city council and the mayor are actually doing this to actually preserve quality of life, or do you think they're doing it to stunt and or control growth, that is the centralized growth in the downtown area?
I think that's what they're doing. I think it's becoming a political game. There's a lot of special interests. You got a bunch of radical environmentalists out there. It's like they want zero growth. They basically want us all to go back to riding bicycles or walking to work, and that just ain't going to cut it. It's not going to happen in this society.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I tend to think that right now this current city council, or at least several of the members of it, including the mayor, are using environmentalists in an effort to put forward a plan which would stunt growth in outlying areas and promote growth in the downtown area, which is, of course, advantageous to the tax base that they currently control. I think it's very interesting. It's been quoted that Mayor Watson spent $700,000 on his campaign, and that's a $30,000 a year job. Have you ever heard figures like that before?
No, I sure have not.
Do you think that's a believable figure?
I could imagine that, yes.
Do you have any idea why a person would spend $700,000 to get a $30,000 a year job?
No. All I can say is there's some special interests out there that want him in, and they want him in for a reason.
Yeah, I personally think it's to keep us in the downtown area.
Definitely.
I appreciate your comments.
Not a problem.
It was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Hey, again, things are starting to wind down here. It's getting pretty dark. Actually, wind down for us. There's the KI News van. Apparently, they're coming down here to do a report. And then there's this fine gentleman here who, I don't know if he was hired by the IRS or what, but he's doing a damn fine job of collecting IRS money. Really, you work for the Postal Service, and I noticed that you're yelling quite loudly for people to give up their tax money. How long have you done this for? 15 years. 15 years. For 15 years, have you stood out here and done this? Oh, okay. No problem.
Get him yelling.
No, that's okay. He definitely enjoys his job, though, yelling for people to come pay their taxes. He's kind of like, they ought to have him wear a hood though, and stand there with the big, How do they operate? Interesting. Then why does the federal government still own you? It's not a private company. No, because there's been lots of talk about selling it.
Move on up.
Wow, he's really been duped. He's been told the post office is a private company. A gentleman that's worked for the post office for 15 years just told me that the post office is a private company. I don't think that's accurate. Sir, what do you think about the IRS? Confusing as hell.
I'm sure I got it all wrong. Oh, yeah. Right, you got it on the bottom.
What do you think about the IRS? What do you think about the IRS?
I wish they weren't around.
Very good. Very good. You can do it. You can make that change. What do you think about the IRS? We do want to know. What do you think about the IRS?
They're on the other side. Jack, bring those out.
What do you think about the IRS? Any comments about the IRS? Any comments about the IRS?
No, I'm getting money back. I'm just lazy.
You know, that was your money to begin with. They borrowed it interest-free for a year.
That's right.
You know, the income tax is completely voluntary. I could prove it to you.
Prove it.
Come to the other side of the building. We'll show you. There's individuals over there that have the literature. You don't have to pay that. What do you think about the IRS? What do you think about the IRS? What do you think about the IRS? Oh, well, I love it. I love it. Gave him the bird. Let me just do a couple more. Let's check the other side. What do you think about the IRS? Oh, it's okay. Well. What do you think about the IRS?
Well, how many do I need?
Do you like the current tax code?
No, I hate it.
How would you like to see it changed?
Flat tax.
Flat tax? Don't you think it could grow to the beast that the current tax system is?
I don't know. I just don't like this.
Ah, you might look into that consumption tax, or better yet, no tax at all, just fair trade with foreign countries. How do you...
Terrible.
You can do something, go vote. How do you feel about the IRS? He hates it. He definitely hates it. How do you feel about the IRS?
The IRS sucks. We got to get some reform going on.
What kind of reforms would you like to see?
Get to where the federal government, where the post office has to pay taxes like UPS does and everybody else.
Oh, he just said they're a private company.
No.
I know. He's really been pulled one over on. They really pulled one over on him. Oh, I'm not blocking. How do you feel about the IRS? National sales tax. Very good. The founding fathers envisioned that.
Right here, ready to go.
I'd rather you spend that money on that little girl back there. Just fine. Wouldn't you rather spend that money somewhere else? Really? Just wanted to go to the government. IRS. You know, the nicer the car, the less the comments we've been getting. You got a pretty nice car. A lot of fun, he said. A lot of fun. Yeah. What do you think about the IRS? Yeah, Mike's the producer of an Access television show called The Freedom Report. I want to show you something.
But you're going to give me some literature, right?
Yeah, I really will. That was okay, I want to go get that stuff for him.
It don't matter. I will make it an Access TV.
Cool. That's
Well, hello, folks. This is Mike Hanson here, and we appreciate you watching my new YouTube channel, Hanson Archives. Be sure to subscribe there, hit the subscribe button, and I have a new YouTube channel that we're going to put all the Waco stuff on, Waco Archives. And don't forget our other channel, Mike Hanson Archives. And if you'd like to help out getting all these thousands of tapes uploaded to YouTube, I am offering a special. If you send $25 into this address the lady is going to put up on the screen, we'll send you a signed copy of my book, Bohemian Grove, Cult of Conspiracy. And it was forwarded by Tex Mars. It just recently passed away. So our address there is 901 St. Joseph Street in Gonzales, Texas. So, and if you want to call us for any reason, our number is 830-672-3089. Be sure to keep subscribing, and if you want to look us up on Facebook, it's Mike Hanson, Hanson, from Gonzales, Texas. Alrighty, stay tuned right here on these channels for all these classics. Alex Jones, Jeff Davis, and a bunch of other great Patriots. So we'll see you next time. Keep supporting us. We need the support. It's costing a lot of money. God bless you.
Come on, anybody want to come up here? All right, that's it. All right, who wants to lead it? Let Gene go. Go ahead. Yes, sir. All right. God bless the Republic. Death to the new